Hello, everyone. Good evening. Do you remember it was the 25th of September, and we're doing weekly manga recap today. How you doing, Quinn?
I am doing. I think I'm doing okay, Nick. I think we all are. I feel like I want to go into a bit, and there's two major reasons why I shouldn't. One, we have a lot to do today. We have a lot. I feel like we should just be moving right into it. But two is we actually should probably talk about the somber news off the start, just to kind of make sure we don't, muddy up our own tone here. But we did want to speak very briefly about a loss that the anime and manga community had over the weekend. Nicolas Dupree from Anime News Network, also known as LossThief on social media, passed away, which is incredibly tragic, extraordinarily young, I think early 30s. LossThief was a member of the WMR Discord for a period of time. Yep. And I've interacted with LossThief in the past and consider myself, at the very least, like mutuals. Like we added each other in Discord when like the Twitter crash happened. Like it was definitely somebody that I had a lot of fond affections for. So we wanted to, as a show, express condolences to everybody who knew Nicolas, to anybody who had the opportunity to know him, and to also bring awareness to the fact that Nicolas's mom, who is getting together his funeral, was obviously not expecting to lose her son at this age. So we will, with this episode that comes out, which should be out like ASAP, I'm going to be releasing a whole bunch. We will include the link to a GoFundMe that Nicolas's mom put together to help with those funds. So we wanted to kind of express that.
Yeah, it's very, very unfortunate when something like this happens, and it's a very particular feeling to have, because I'm not going to pretend like, oh, we were best friends or anything like that, but there was like you said, there was a connection that we had made. After I got the news, I could remember like I interacted with LossThief a few times, and I went back and I saw and I had those memories, just like on social media and stuff before social media became terrible. And that's a feeling that you have when you make the connection with someone, because they kind of carry a part of you and you carry a part of them with you. And so you do feel that loss. And of course, yes, it's all the condolences that we can offer to his family, to his loved ones. And it sucks. And that's the most that I can really say about it. And so, yeah. But I guess we don't want to, dwell on that too much. And we can, one of the ways that we can, do right by him is also by talking about the media that he loved. Yes. So let's do that.
How brutal would it be if we saw like LossThief? He's like, and my favorite anime, Mar. I'd be like, ooh, I don't.
But say do you remember, Sadistic September. Guys, we have, for the last several weeks, been doing an annual tradition here on Weekly Manga Recap. This is like our eighth year, I think, doing this, of taking a series that we expect to be bad, and we go through it so that we can discuss it in detail with the expectation that we are not gonna like it. We have covered some series that have been absolutely horrible on this show, and I will say, off the bat, this is the least bad that we've done for Sadistic September.
I think I will agree with that.
But we have covered series. Yes, it's still bad. Like, it's frustrating.
Oh, this absolutely was a Sadistic September for me. I was so annoyed. I got really behind on it because I've just been dealing with a lot of life things. So I really crammed like the last like 60-70% of this series in about a week.
But to give you, I would say, like, stuff that we've covered on the show, a lot of times I would say it's like eating a bunch of like wasabi. Like, it's just like, as a white guy, so you eat a bunch of it, it's like, oh my god, this is painful to consume this, and yet I have to keep consuming it even though it hurts to do so. Some stuff, it's been like eating cardboard, where it's like, this is bad for me and it's just kind of boring, but I just have to eat it all. And sometimes it's been wasabi covered cardboard, where it's both. This is, I would describe it personally like eating a bunch of grits. I say that as a Southern boy who don't like grits. I have met people who like grits. My dad liked grits. Okay? There are people who I can definitely see enjoying it, and I do understand why. They have found a way to, get it, flavored up in just the right way, or they've just kind of developed, a taste for it, and I get that. But me, I hate grits. It's too bland, and there's too much of it. And that is how I felt about this series, is just that there is too much of it. It's not like there's a gigantic amount. This lasted about 3 years in the early 2000s, with January 2003 to July 2006. But the more I read of it, the less I liked it. That's where I'm at.
So, yeah, I'm not going to weigh in on your grit thoughts. I don't know if I feel qualified to. But I want to say this. So I should start by speaking to my experience with this series, because this was this premise of Sadistic September started with getting Quinn to read Air Gear finally, like, and doing it on the show. Something I had spoken of reading and thinking sucked, and then doing it, and that was kind of the general theme throughout our Sadistic Septembers. Nymphets was an exclusion to all that.
I'm so sorry about that.
We've apologized many times. Outside of that, it was supposed to be a series we had some kind of connection to. That well's pretty much dry now. Mar is, I think, the last thing I could think of that I was like, oh, I read this as a kid and it was really bad. I borrowed this from my friend Frank, who I believe still sometimes listens to the show. So if you are, hello, Frank, you should text me. But I don't know if... I can't remember any other series that's really on this level. And Mar wasn't as egregious as the other ones. My big issue with Flame of Recca was that I bought it as a child when I had no money. Like, I barely worked a job. So, like, getting manga was kind of rare for me. And I spent, like, 7, volumes worth on dog shit. But, like, something I hated. So that was where a lot of the issues. I never purchased Mar. This was a purchase my friend Frank had that I eventually borrowed from him. And I read, I want to say, I know I got to the point where they started the tournament, and then eventually I just stopped asking for volumes. I could, like, say that maybe, like, oh, life pulled us apart or something. I honestly think I just ran out of interest for this series. Like, it wasn't particularly engaging. And
right when the series was getting started.
Oh my god. So I will say that really all I remember of it was that it was kind of cheesy and it was just a bunch of fights that weren't very interesting. And at the time I didn't even realize this was another one from the Flame of Recca author.
Nobuyuki Anzai.
Yes, I was trying to remember the name. And piecing that together, I will say right now, I don't know which is better between Flame of Recca or Mar. They're both not good, but in different ways. I think Flame of Recca was hornier, which I didn't like, and was also, I think, a bit dumber. But I have a lot of issues with Mar and just how exhaustingly uninteresting it is as a universe. I don't know if I want to, like, jump straight into the negatives, but I mean, fuck it. I think we are here for Sadistic September. This
to lay a little bit of groundwork on what the series is about. And by the way, some of you may remember that the anime for this show was on Toonami. If you're from the English speaking,
oh my god,
wasn't it?
I think you are right, but I think it was at a point where I stopped watching.
Yeah,
Toonami.
it was a bit late in that original Toonami run before it went away and stuff. Yeah, it was on Toonami. Mm-hmm.
All right.
But the Japanese run of it debuted in 2005 to give you an idea of when it would have been on English TV, or American TV.
Yeah.
But so this is a series that ran 2003 to 2006 to give you an idea of the era. It's about a 14-year-old boy named Ginta. Ginta is a fucking loser from, modern day Japan. He is, weak, scrawny, wears glasses, plays video games all day, and so he's got bad eyesight because of that, I guess. But he also has dreams regularly of this fantasy world called Marchen. And so in his dreams, he thinks about going on adventures there, rescuing princesses and fighting monsters and that kind of thing. And then one day, this magical portal opens up while he is in the middle of his class, and he has the opportunity to go to Marchen and have adventures there. And so he does. When he gets there, he has just enhanced physical strength and endurance just to, just so he doesn't immediately get exhausted because he is, a dorky 14-year-old. And he starts to go on adventures there. The magical system, the big thing for how magic works is that there are all of these artifacts called arms that are weapons or trinkets.
Oh, we are getting a little bit of a Nick hiccup here. It is worth noting that Nick is in some inclement weather, so there was a chance of some of this happening. So hopefully this is an isolated incident and will not continue for too much longer. It's not looking great, though.
Will not be allowed. Yeah.
Oh, here we go. I think we're finally back.
Okay. I think it was just my upstream because everything was coming through just fine for me.
Okay.
But anyway. Yeah, so there are these things called arms. Various artifacts have all these different powers. Offensive, transportation, bullshit. So that's kind of where we start off, is we got all these things. The first arm that Ginta discovers for himself is this sentient flail, this ball and chain, and the ball has a big mustachioed face on it, and the arm's name is Babo. And Babo becomes Ginta's, at first, reluctant traveling companion / combat partner / weapon. And then Ginta meets some other people, learns about an evil invading force called the Chess Pieces that are trying to take over Marchen, and he's got to stop them by gathering up a group of companions to take them on. That is the basic premise of this series.
Correct. You pretty much have named it. Kodama, by the way, is the item people in our chat are trying to remember. Yeah, you did nail it. This is an isekai before isekais were like a gigantic genre with like 1,000 deconstructions, or kendama, sorry, not kodama. Kodama is a Magic the Gathering term, I believe.
It's also another thing, but go on.
Wait, what? It could be more than one thing?
Yeah, what words?
Fuck it. I really am going to sound dumb when I'm like, this series was stupid. I didn't know one thing could be two things. Yeah, it was an isekai before isekais were like a giant thing that had all these different variations and like deconstructions, and it wasn't a tired genre at that point, but at the same time, it wasn't like a particularly fresh premise or anything like that. Haven or Heaven, whatever it was, is basically just generic fantasy world. Like, it's not as though there's anything distinct to it besides that people use these like artifacts to fight with. And there was
I should have remembered it was called Mar Heaven, but the subtitle of the series, Mar, is Marchen Awakens Romance.
Yeah.
So I just kind of equated that in my head. So,
which we should say is sort of I don't know the Germanic like definition of that, like if it's a phrase or anything specific. Obviously I get Awakens Romance, but this is like a series with like a fairy tale aesthetic to a lot of its characters, although functionally the world is very just like medieval fantasy. Like this is not like a fairy tale world where there are like giant forests full of witches and like cool stuff like that. Most stuff takes place in like dungeon, town, building.
Basically, occasionally they do come across, some sort of magical creatures. One of the main supporting characters, Alvis, has initially a traveling companion who is a fairy. I say initially because she doesn't fight, so she never fucking shows up after a certain point, basically.
Yeah, there reaches a point where if you don't actively do one-on-one fights, then you don't get to be relevant to the plot anymore. And what I wanted to get to, I guess, before we get too distracted, is that this series, I think, does mean a lot to people in our audience. And I want to stress that, like, I am going to be very critical of this series because that is ultimately what this show and this premise is about, is giving our honest thoughts. And I did not like this. But I don't want anyone to come across. I have series that, like, if I look back on them now, I don't like them anymore and things like that. I don't necessarily want to say that's what this case is going to be for you. I don't want to say like, oh guys, the Pink Opaque wasn't that good if you actually watch it again or whatever. But I don't want anyone to feel like targeted in this when I am pretty harsh in saying things about this series in just a moment.
Yeah. The way that the series is paced is that we have
dog shit.
Ginta. It is very bad pacing. It's so horrible pacing. Ginta shows up in this other world. He gets isekai'd. After about 10-ish chapters of going around, he does come to the understanding of like, oh yeah, like even though I've been dreaming of coming to this world, I've got it. My mom's waiting for me back home. I've got a love interest? ? Period. But question mark. Yes, she is, but she's not actively there fighting, so we kind of forget about Koyuki for huge parts of this story.
Yeah.
But so he is trying to get back home, but he's also like, but I also want to like go on adventures and stuff. It's just that I will, go on adventures and eventually I'll find a way to go back home. But all of that just gets hijacked by this invading force, the chess pieces, who are just this, evil army of all sorts of different ne'er-do-wells who want to take over Marheaven and rule it. And there was also this invading force that they did 6 years ago, where that whole war between them and the United Forces of Marheaven was settled in this massive tournament called the War Games.
Yeah. It's a giant chess-themed tournament that is basically just like a Survivor Series match, except sometimes you get to continue and then sometimes you don't.
We'll talk about the stupid tournament rules in a little bit. I can't get sidetracked right now.
Okay.
I have thoughts about the structure of this tournament. So it's not a tournament.
Nick is the chess. What are they? The chess pieces. You're the chess pieces like strategic consultant, and you're just like Phantom. I think.
Why are you doing this at all?
Yes, that's the first question. You greatly outnumber everybody. Just kill them.
They take okay. So for some reason, the chess pieces who emerge like around the time that Ginta shows up in Marheaven, like there have been some invading forces, and so the members of like the knights that defend the realm essentially kind of know that they're coming and have seen like some initial opening forces, and there have been some fringe groups like the Thieves Guild that have been targeted by them. A fringe kingdom, their princess was kidnapped so they could use the castle as their base and stuff. But after Ginta gets in there, he goes on this training arc with a bunch of his companions, and while they're away for like a week, essentially, the chess pieces take over half of the continent.
Why did you
all
stop?
Their superior forces. And then they decide we're going to settle things in this War Games in this tournament with you guys.
This is some straight
like,
WWE shit. Somebody was like,
why?
There's a pay-per-view, dog. We need a big match. And he's like, I guess I'll stop killing you to do this.
All right. And on top of that, it's as if because this happened 6 years prior as well, and the previous invasion of the chess pieces, and that was stopped because the forces of Marheaven won the war games that settled things. So instead of saying like, "Oh, but this time we won't have that," and then like maybe the forces of Marheaven have to forcefully invoke it in order to stop them. Or instead of saying, but this time we'll do things differently, we'll stack the deck in our favor, they're like, let's just do it again. And this time it'll work better.
It's very funny to me because they don't, like this is not like an ancient rule to this world that like wars are to be resolved in war. Like it's not like this is something that chess pieces created. They
organized it. They're running it.
That they lost the first time, and then the second time, out of some interest in like fairness, decide to run it back the exact same way, which is like, well, we'll send the weakest members of our group at you one at a time, slowly getting whittled down and letting you get stronger by experience until we face you at our current level, and then we'll lose. It's wild. They have a team that they're like, this is the strongest team in existence. I'm like, why didn't you start with them? There was no rule to do it any other way.
On top of that, there is an important detail, which is that a mysterious hero from another world came to Marheaven 6 years ago and helped the force of Marheaven defeat the chess pieces. And it is super obvious from like the first mention who it is. There is like it comes to a point eventually where it becomes so obvious that it feels like it's revealed who it is just offhandedly because there's the understanding that it's too obvious and we can't keep this a secret.
Everyone's understanding that it's his dad, right? So when a character just says, Ginta, your dad was the last hero, we don't have to make it like a big deal, right?
Ginta just has this revelation. He's like, I wonder if the last guy was my dad. I think it was. He just has it very nonplussed. Like, okay. I think it was my dad who came here.
I need to talk. Look, we're going to be all over the place with this because there's a lot of stuff to talk about it. But I need to talk about Ginta and the fact that this boy has zero character development over the course of the series. He is the same. He is an annoying teenager when he comes into the world. He does not change. He is confronted multiple times by things that should be earth-shattering revelations, and he does not care. Finds out his dad is the original person who came to this world. Meh. Finds out his dad's dead. Dang, I'm going to avenge my dad. Finds out Babo is like anciently sealed with an evil demon that escaped, took over his dad's body, and now his dad is inside of like this is like the end of the series stuff, and he's still just kind of like
he's just like okay,
yeah, time to punch you now, and you're just like, this is wild.
This is
a character tells him, they're like, hey, your friend Kyoko from the other world, it has a like magical link with Princess Snow that when they're asleep they can basically communicate and see through each other's like worlds. And he's just like, huh, well, ain't that neat? You can't use it for evil though. Like,
Ginta is the protagonist that a 14-year-old writes when they're doing their first fanfic.
Yes.
He's just has all the powers, conveniently has powers that make it so that he never actually runs into trouble, and he is not shocked or put off by anything that should logically at least bother him a little.
I hate this kid so much because look, he's annoying. He is supposed to be annoying. He's like a 14-year-old boy. So like it makes sense he's a little obnoxious. But like the world every so often tries to address the fact that there is like a 14-year-old optimist at its helm that like is leading the army. Like it's worth noting, the war games, everyone except for Ginta's group gets annihilated in like the trial round. So really, Ginta is the only one left, and they declare him the team captain. And at no point does anyone question like, why are we letting this 14-year-old boy be our captain?
Right.
When he is constantly like demanding we not kill people And we're
Yes.
we're war survivors who want to do it. It is never fully explored. They just hint at it once or twice.
This is a 161 chapter series. We start the war games in chapter 41. The war games last until chapter 149. So you are looking at like 70% of this story takes place in this death tournament to decide the fate of the world. That is the thing that is going on throughout almost all of this series, is we have to beat these opponents, and if we lose any of our team battles, the world is doomed. And that level of consequence and seriousness never feels like it is felt by anyone. It is just a constant, we're going to get stronger, we're going to do this.
Like, even the concept of being in a tournament isn't really something the manga seems to get. Because if you're in something that's like, hey, we're going to do 5 one-on-one matches, it doesn't matter. As long as your team wins more, you get to move on. But if your captain loses, you're out, which is just a stupid rule. Like, it fucks up the whole thing, because Ginta can automatically never lose by default. Like, you're like, well, the series isn't done yet, so I'm going to assume Ginta's going to win this match. But like, you would expect, if it's a series of one-on-one matches, you would be like, okay, well, you get to play with then who wins and who loses and what stories can we tell. 90% of the matches, Ginta and his team win handedly. It is almost never a concern going into the last round to be like, all right, Ginta, like, because every match has to fucking end with Ginta, so it doesn't matter if they win or lose, they would lose anyway. But like, you would be able to put some suspense in by being like, hey, we win, Jack, if you win this fucking match at the end of this or something like that. But they don't do that. It's never interesting who wins or loses matches.
I want to talk about this tournament rule. This is a good time to talk about the tournament rules and how they work. So the war games works by having Team Mar, which is what they decide to call their team. And there are like 7 members of this group that can actually fight. And the way that it works is the proctor of the tournament, who works for the chess pieces, but is neutral.
There was a joke at one point where the judge says, like, and I'll do all the dice rolls. And Alan says something like, you better not cheat. And he's like, yipes, I guess I won't now. And I'm like, well, why don't you just wait till Alan's not there and do it? Because he's not there for like half the matches.
He's not there, at first, by requirement, 2/3 of the time. I'll talk about Alan. So he rolls the dice, and one of the dice dictates how many participants from each team will fight. And it's always one-on-one battles, and it's always whoever wins the most battles wins the team battle. But if the team captain loses, the team battle is lost. So, like you said, yes, Ginta has to win every battle, because otherwise the tournament's over and they lose.
Correct.
But it runs into another problem, which is because Mar is constantly curb stomping every opponent they face. I counted. There are 7 rounds, 7 team battles. They lose a total of 6 individual fights. And of those 6 fights, there's an asterisk on every fucking one of them.
The first time one of their team members loses a fight, the other member goes, damn, they actually really won when you think about it. And you're like, fuck off.
It sucks. But on top of that,
how many of those losses are just Jack?
It's 2.
Okay.
So he's got a third
That's
of their
a sizable
losses.
chunk.
And even he wins more battles than he loses. It's ridiculous. They're so overpowered for their opponents. So the problem becomes, because Ginta has to win his battle, whenever Mar gets ahead in the team battle score, which happens like every single time, they are never down 0-2. No. In any team contest, they are always up at a minimum by round 3, 2-1, which means in a round of 5, they have to only win 2 of the non-Ginta battles. So if by the 3rd round they've won 2, then it gets to round 4, and it's like, well, this match has no consequence.
Why don't you just give up? Why don't you entering in just say, I'm gonna quit and save my energy for the next time? It's because there's this stupid rule that your team, as long as it wins, anyone who won their fights gets to keep fighting even if your team lost. Yes. So as long as your captain wasn't defeated, which it doesn't, that's an inconsequential rule for the chess pieces. Their team captain is Phantom, and he doesn't fight until the last round of this tournament. He's the last match. It's a relevant detail. But otherwise, anyone who beats someone from Team Mar basically just gets to kind of cameo again in the next round, except for the times that they don't, as in Magical Row, who is never defeated there and just doesn't show up again until they enter like a castle and they're like, hey, Row, eat shit. They like drive by, whoop his ass. And that's it.
There is a weird moment where they have one or two participants from the previous rounds who won their individual fights. And they're like, well, we could go in. And they're like, nah, it was always going to be us in the final round. It's like, well, then why did you bother to have this rule of maintaining people and carrying them over? Yeah. And the only time that it ever is of any consequence, like there is one where there's a girl who beats Jack in their first fight and then fights him again, and they have a rematch to show that Jack has gotten stronger and he beats her.
Sure.
But it's
not good. It just
doesn't matter. And then she's in love with him afterwards, I guess. So
whoa, Nick, how dare you say that about Bad Usopp? I mean Jack.
Yeah. So but the only other time it's of consequence is that, so there are different ranks within the chess pieces. I don't like the theming of this group.
No, Nick, you know how it goes in chess? Pawn, rook, bishop, knight, queen, king.
I was so happy that we were getting a villain group that was chess themed. I thought, oh, I've never seen that in a manga before. Turns out it's because this fucking series claimed it and did it badly. Because there's nothing chess about them in any way. It's just, you get stronger, you go to a different level of peace, and then at the end there is one queen and one king. But there's like 12 knights. The 12 knights are quote unquote themed around the different zodiacs. No, they're not.
No. Look, so I don't want to interrupt you, but I do want to speak very quickly to the theming in this series, which is primarily supposed to be fairy tales, but also is chess, is zodiacs, is all this sort of stuff. The theming is very, very window dressing only. If I told you this is a fairy tale series, you're like, oh, I get to see like explorations of my favorite fairy tales. I'd be like, no, absolutely not. No. You will see characters named after some of your favorite fairy tales.
Right.
And if you're good and you're very lucky, one character might have like a couple attacks themed around their narrative.
Honestly, the best example is Dorothy. Yes. Honestly, if everyone were at her level, I'd be totally fine with the theming of this series. Dorothy is a really weirdly bright spot in this bad story in general.
Team Mar is dog shit, except for Dorothy.
Dorothy is I guess you would have to call her the female lead. It takes her a little bit of time to actually fully settle into that role, but she's the first person that Ginta meets. She is introduced as this kind of happy-go-lucky. She's a very Nami character.
Yes. She's a lady thief. She is a lady thief who is charming. She is, Catwoman. She's Nami. She's, all those sorts of things.
And she is also a witch who gathers all of these different arms, and she's kind of always hunting for them to get to collect them up and stuff like that. And a lot of her arms that she uses in combat are Dorothy the Wizard of Oz themed. So for example, her main weapon is a broom, the Wicked Witch from the story of the Wizard of Oz, and she is a wind sorceress. She uses it to command tornadoes, like the one that brought Dorothy to Oz. She has a bunch of these summons that are themed after the main Wizard of Oz character. So she's got a hellhound named Toto, which when she pulled out Toto for the first time, I legitimately was like, oh shit, Dorothy's awesome.
So this confused me at first, because she summons She summons Toto. And I immediately was like, oh, she's gonna have a lion, or a scarecrow, Tin Man, Cowardly Lion reference. And we didn't get there for a while until I realized that Night Guardian she got at the start is her Tin Man. And then I was like, oh, so the doll, when you think about it, was kind of the scarecrow. She has like a doll. And then she just summons a scarecrow later. And I'm like, so was the doll anything? Like, why? I lost the theming we were going for then.
I never figured out what that was supposed to be. And then in like her last fight, she summons this winged lion. And it's like, okay, there's the Cowardly Lion. So, hey, we got through all those, like, good. You know, you have a main character that actually gets through like all these different references you can make and stuff. But then there's like, well, there's Jack. He wants to summon a beanstalk and he's plant themed. It's like, okay, I kind of get that. Is there a harp that he gets? No.
How about some golden eggs?
Is there a giant he fights? No. He wants to make a beanstalk. He's Jack. Okay.
Yeah, like, is his incompetence a story that we're gonna play at? Like, sort of. Like, oh, so like in like an interesting relationship with his mom. Like, no, he has a very trusting. Where like they don't do anything with the Jack and the Beanstalk story, and that's the case with like everyone. They do a Pinocchio at some point, who's like a killer doll, and I was like kind of into this idea, and then Pinocchio just like once, like his last line before dying, he's like, "I wish I could have been a real boy," and I'm like, "Fuck off!" I was like, you don't get credit for doing this at the last second.
And so. Yeah, like if everyone were at that level, it would be fine, but they're not. And a lot of times there are just characters, like every once in a while, you'll come across a character that is fairy tale themed. So like they come across a villain named Rapunzel. She fights people with her hair. That's just kind of it, the extent of it, which is fine. If it were like kind of a thing you could actually point to consistently, but a lot of times it's just like, well, they're a fantasy villain and they fought them. The way that this we're going to be talking about the war game so much.
That's the only thing worth talking about. Not because it's the only good part. In fact, it's the opposite. I think the time before it was the only time Mar is remotely interesting. But 90% of this series is one long tournament.
I kind of do want to say, as a faint praise for this story, a couple of things. One is that, look, I can tell characters apart in this story. All right, people have distinct designs. I can tell people apart, and then if there are two characters that are supposed to be very reminiscent of one another, you can tell that at a glance. So it's very easy to read this. There's a lot of action beats and a lot of stretches where there's little to no dialogue, so it's easy to go through it. It goes down easy, even if you think that it's all bad, which I did. And it's also easy to tell, what's going on and who's doing what. And in theory, the way that combat works is well designed because of the way that the arms work. People don't have innate magic that they just call upon. They use these different artifacts, which each have unique abilities to them. And because they're different items, they tend to be disparate abilities. It's not like, oh, well, I have, I punched you with fire and then I kick you with fire, like we got used to seeing in Fairy Tail eventually all the time. People have signature attacks that feel like they belong to that person. And even if you have like an element that is associated with you, the element tends to take a form that is distinct to that person. Snow, the princess, has a lot of ice abilities. Her signature attack is summoning big-ass snowmen to drop on people. Jack has plant abilities, and his main thing is to, call up vines from the ground. Dorothy calls, tornadoes around herself. So it's not just, an elemental blast with a different color around it every single time that someone uses an attack. They also have summons, so it's got this very JRPG feel to it, where a lot of their big attacks are calling on these big monsters that often get these big splash pages when they're first called upon. So there is at least a feel of, okay, there are different feeling unique looking things that a character does whenever they fight. Unfortunately, there are a lot of times when the same character will fight two fights close together, and they'll just win the fight the same way twice in a row.
Yes.
When a better thought out series would throw in a twist there of, oh, well, especially because you're in a tournament and your enemy can see your previous battles, they see you summon your fuck off big ace summon thing, and they have a counter for it.
There
and
is seemingly
on at least 3 times I can think of, someone uses their big fuck off summon to win a battle, and then the next match they just win the same way.
Yeah.
It's
They're
dumb and frustrating.
There is no like, even though the chess pieces are throwing like wave after wave at these guys, none of the next opponents seem to have learned anything by having them fight. It really does seem like there is zero advantage to doing this stupid tournament this way. And like, one thing that I wanted to see explored is just the idea that I'm like, all right, look, like, you have mechanics in this world that are somewhat intriguing. Like, the thing that separates your world from others is like, hey, we get our powers from these artifacts. It's specifically, a lot of them are these guardians, which are just big creatures that sometimes have very nebulous abilities. Some of them do some pretty crazy things. And once they are destroyed, the thing that summons them is also destroyed. And some of these have consciousness. Like, some of them exist, are living things. It feels like there should be some level of concern. Like, maybe a character wins a fight, but they lose their guardian in the process, and they've lost a piece of themselves.
Dorothy, because she's an arms collector, she has all of these different arms to call on, and then like her first battle, one of them breaks. Like, so it feels like that should have some manner of consequence to her. She should at least be mad about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny because Dorothy is the most interesting character in a lot of ways, because she is, again, she's one of the few characters that brings up that discussion about killing people. Like, she is the one who kills somebody very openly early on. She defies Ginta at some point and kills somebody. Yeah. And that's, again, it's not discussed. He doesn't have a heart-to-heart with her or anything like that afterwards. There is zero consequence to her doing that. But, like, Dorothy... she has so many like weird like character traits that I enjoy, but they don't mesh together. There is like a moment where she is like wandering around, and she was introduced to us as an arm hunter. Like, she is like a thief in this world who gathers up cool and rare arms. We don't know why, and we find out why eventually. And the answer is like, oh, she belonged to like the kingdom where all these arms came from, and they were stolen, so she feels like it's her duty to bring them back. But it doesn't like help you understand her personality more. No. She'll just go into a scene and she'll be like, ha ha ha, I can't wait to get this cool rare arm. And then you'll flip a page and she'll be like, because I have to, you know, earn back the respect of my family. And you're like, fuck off. These two like don't mesh anymore, you know? Like, it's just not a full character.
I felt the same way about Snow. So Snow is a character that is rescued by Ginta early on in the series because like her kingdom is taken over by the chess pieces. They're kind of the first kingdom that falls. And so when she is rescued, there's this immediate romantic entanglement that she and Ginta have because they accidentally kiss when she's freed from her eyes and stuff. And also she is the Mar Heaven reflection of Koyuki, who is Ginta's best friend and love interest back home. So there's also that existing connection between them. But there are a lot of times when Snow demonstrates that, like, you know, even though she's been through all these different things, she's lost her home, she's got all this pressure on her, she's this very bright and determined young girl who's like, I want to help. I want to, you know, settle things. And like, her mother-in-law is the one who has been like leading the invading force of the chess pieces. She is actually the queen in the chess pieces. And so when that's revealed, she's like, I want to settle things with her. And she's like, I want to, you know, be of help to Ginta and everyone else. So she's got all this like strength about her, and it's constantly commented on, especially early on, about how strong she is despite being, you know, this kid who's got all this pressure on her and has suffered through all this tragedy. But then there will be points where she'll be bizarrely eccentric and goofy, and it's not a problem on paper to have a character have different sides to themselves, but there's not really any recognition for why she acts different ways when it doesn't feel quite appropriate. First of all, she gets hung up on Ginta so easily. Ginta's portrayed as having too much riz. I don't understand what the appeal of this stupid boy is, because
it's very wish fulfillment-y, because I always read that he was supposed to look very nebbish and like kind of dorky in the other world. He had like these giant Coke bottle glasses, and his hairstyle just seemed like kind of like a dorky kid style. And then he goes to this world, and he doesn't need his glasses anymore. His vision's better. He's super strong and tough. He can run all day and do all this stuff. And
he gets a Kingdom Hearts outfit.
Yeah, and every woman fucking adores. Like every woman they meet is like, Ginta's fucking hot. Like, this slab of man. It like, then they shit on fucking Jack, and I'm like, what's
wrong with Jack? He's strong and he loves his mom.
Yeah, I'm like, what's the difference in these two to you? I don't get it. Like,
also, I'm not sure how. Like, Dorothy is apparently supposed to be like 16. She looks like she's like 20, and she's got it hard for Ginta, and it feels really weird. Oh god. Yeah, there's just this constant thing of like these guys who are like, why does Ginta get all the attention? It's like, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine.
Maybe because you made the 11-year-old team captain. I don't know. You kind of made this kid a big deal yourselves as well.
You did.
Yeah. Let's just run through the cast real quick, because there's only so much to talk about here. Ginta, as we said, sucks. Snow, not particularly great. Jack is. I want to like him, but Jack sucks ass. He sucks ass so much, and he doesn't get better at any point. This motherfucker goes through so many training arcs in this series. It only ran 161 chapters. I think he goes through 5 different training tournaments. Like, there's this stupid system they have.
Let's talk about this training system.
Okay, yeah.
This pissed me off so much. So the first time that we were introduced to this training system, these gates, where essentially a gate opens in the ground through the use of an arm. You go into the gate, and time dilates in there. 1 day is 60 days, which means that 1 minute is an hour inside the gate, which means you get a lot more training done. The first time that Ginta and Jack go in the gates, they have a special trial waiting there for them that they have to pass that has to do with syncing up with their signature arm in a certain way. That never comes up again.
It's never relevant.
It was actually kind of good when it was done, because it felt like something had been worked for and earned.
Yes.
And that's the only time that this ever happens where it feels like someone actually earns a power-up. In a shonen battle series, this is the only time this happens.
It's funny because they'll use this fucking door thing again to train people, but you just
every round
will not get to see the results of it. I think one time you get to find out what training they're doing, which is like fighting like a shadow duplicate of themselves. Yeah. And then every other time we're just told they went in there and then came out and they're stronger now. And it's like, eat my fucking entire asshole. Who gives a shit?
Lazy. To just say, it's like you go to your computer and you withdraw your rare candies in between rounds fighting the Elite Four, and then you get stronger because of that, which is not narratively satisfying. That's why rare candy doesn't exist in the Pokemon anime.
Or maybe it would make even a modicum of tension if you had characters lose during the tournaments. So frequently characters will win and they'll be like, get on in there, you got to get stronger. And then they'll come out and they'll be like, I guess I'm stronger.
And the chess pieces know that they're doing this, and they don't use it themselves. They don't do anything to stop them from using it. Literally, there is a battle where Snow, whose powers are ice themed, goes to fucking lava world to have her battle. So she loses as a result of it. And again, it's a battle that a member of Team Mar loses purely because, there's an asterisk on that. You know, you can't really say that was actually a loss. You see, she actually would have won. Blah, 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 blah. But so everyone goes into the gates to train when they have, a day free. Why do they have a day free when the chess pieces decide the rules? I don't know. I feel like giving it to them. So they go in there to train.
One time they're like, "Hey, Dad wants to go back home," essentially, and then like two other times in the series, they're just like, take tomorrow off, rest up, kiddos, like get your strength back."
So they go into the gates to train and stuff, and Snow has to argue with I think it's Alan that she argues with, like, "Well, I want to do this too," and he's like, "Well, but you need to rest and recover." And she's like, I can do that inside the gate, though.
It makes more sense to do it. It's if 60 days in there or 1 day in the real world, why wouldn't you put everyone in there constantly?
Just constantly have a heal cycle going on.
Yeah.
It is the most broken thing that has no consequences or side effects to using it and always works.
I think we need to also talk about consequence. I know we were supposed to talk about characters. We'll come back to it. This series fucking sucks at consequences because they're never relevant. The main character's ability, Babu, turns into these other fucking things. And if it sounds like we're not talking about Babu at all, which is an individual character with like thoughts and feelings, he doesn't do anything. So why talk about it?
The main reason you would have a sentient weapon in a series so that he could have his own stuff going on. He never has his own thing going on except in the background stuff is mentioned about his past.
Yeah, and he doesn't care about it. Like it's like teased once. He's like, I think I have someone else inside of my head. And it's never brought up again. But the main way that this weapon is fought with is it like magic stones are inserted into it. And normally a magic stone just powers up weapons. It's a nonsense thing in this world. It doesn't, no one else does it. But for the specific Babo instrument, every gem inserted into it allows Ginta to create a new form for Babo based off of his fucking imagination. Like
he can do whatever he wants.
There seemingly is no limit. His third version of it, I think, or no, his fourth version of it is a magic woman who immediately undoes all curses. And she undoes like 6 curses in this series that you're just like, cool. I guess we won't. That's not like a thing anymore, I guess.
There is one curse it is mentioned it does not work on specifically. Yeah. Which, if it had undone that, it would have made the series so much worse because it would have negated the only dramatic hook that several characters have.
Well, we'll get to that when we get to Alvis.
So, but it's so frustrating. There is a guy who curses Ginta in his battle with him, and he's got a flame on his head. And he's like, when this flame on my head burns through the candle all the way, your body is the candle. So if this candle burns out, you will melt and die. And he swallows the arm so that Ginta can't just destroy the arm in order to get past it. And so eventually Ginta goes, Alice! Boop! It's undone. And immediately the guy melts because he's like, well, the consequence is that if you undo it, then I melt instead. Ginta has like 3 or 4 battles that are just Uno reversed.
Yeah.
Where he just does one ability and immediately wins the battle because he used it.
It's somewhat like annoying every time he unveils a new ability because you're like, this ability is just as bullshit as the last one, and it's annoying. Why didn't you just be like, oh, I invent a jelly thing that covers me and bounces all attacks. Also, 1,000 nukes drop on your head, and I get $1 billion. Like, I don't know why he doesn't do that. He always stops pretty early on. But, like, I'm also excited because every time he reveals one, I know we're just a little bit closer to the end. Like every time a new form shows up, I'm like, there's only 3 more slots for us to fill on this stupid fucking weapon. And don't worry, he'll get all 3 of those in, like, a fucking speed run montage at the end.
I fucking hate the magic orbs that Ginta gets. And it doesn't have to do with the fact that they're different powers. It's the fact that someone just fucking gives them to him and he doesn't do anything to earn them. He just... Here, have another one, buddy. Fucking Phantom gives him one. What the fuck? For no reason. He's just like, here, have another power, Ginta. Oh boy. He never has to go anywhere. He never has to beat anyone. He fucking's like, first time going training. To get you started, I'll give you... Look, sorry, Ginta. It's really important that we start off our players by showing them the power of our premium currency. So here, have 3 off the bat so you can see how good they are. Actually, Ginta, you're a good boy. You just get a free one every 2 weeks or so.
It's always just given to him. He never has to look for these things under his own power. He never has to, like, explore the world or anything like that. This world, by the way, is so hilariously underexplored. Like, there's no, like, lore to anything that's going on here. No. There's, like, 3 factions in a gigantic planet, and, like, 2 of them die immediately, so it's really just Mars group and the fucking chess pieces. It's so amusing. I truly, like, it's baffling at times. This has, like, full on, like, oh, I'm 12 years old and writing a story for the first time energy, where you're just like, yeah, there's 3 factions, and then the bad guys kill them all. Because there is no lore in this world to build upon. Chess pieces are like evil people, except when they're good people who have to do an evil thing. Why? We don't know. Nothing is explored. Like, there's a character. One of the few Zodiac pieces I like is Ash, because he has a cool design, and he is supposed to be like a good guy. He does not want Ginta to be in this war, because he is also a dad. And he's like, look, these guys wiped out like 80% of the planet. My family will get killed. I don't want my kids to die. So yeah, I will work with these guys, and I don't want to kill you. So just give up and let us win. Like, this is the only way to be happy. And he is proven wrong. But there's like other characters who are like, yeah, I'm with the chess pieces because the world is evil. Like, okay, how?
The chess pieces.
Name a thing.
The chess pieces' entire, like, reason for existing is so frustrating because there is this constant 12-year-old writing fan fiction thing of, like, you know, humans are evil to each other, and so I am just balancing the scales. Like, humans will stop mistreating each other once I rule over them and stuff. And then Ginta, with all the wisdom of his being the protagonist, goes, "But what you're doing is bad too," and they have no response to that.
They're like,
and it gets to a point that it's so bad that eventually it's revealed that actually the reason why Phantom, who is the leader of the Knights, and Diane, who is the queen of the chess pieces, the reason that they actually believe these things and are working against humanity like this is because they talked to an evil orb.
yes.
An evil orb. Now, did the evil orb brainwash them? Or did it make well-reasoned arguments to convince them that humans were bad and they needed to exterminate them? Never revealed. But they talked to the orb, and then they started
that orb's
believing
fucking
that
evil. So anyone who talks to it would now be evil as well. That's just how the world would work.
So some of the chess pieces who work for them are, you know, they're murderous assholes. They work for them because they're like, we're evil. They want to kill people.
There is a character that's like, I love killing people, especially women. That's what he shouts out. And I was like, all right, I know what this series is going to be about to some degree. Because, like, even though that character is presented as, of course, being in the wrong, he is one of the more interesting members of the chess pieces because
he's at least kind of memorable.
So many of them just don't have a backstory or anything to detail who they are. Like, there's oh my god, there's so many like characters who are supposed to be significant when they show up, and then you fight them and they don't do anything. Ian's the only one who actually gets like a character arc. It's not a good one,
and his sucks.
But he does get one. But like, I was so excited for fucking Halloween and Alan's fight, because Halloween is this dope ass fucking design. he's just like a pumpkin guy who's like chained to a coffin. And they said the last time he was in this war, he and Alan fought to a draw. That's how fucking deadly these motherfuckers were. And now that the war is coming back, you know on sight these two are going to eventually fight each other. Like, that is like destiny. And I'm so excited because I was like, I don't need any more backstory than that. Like, I'm a wrestling fan. Two guys had a great match. I want to see them run it back. Like, I don't need more. Then they get into it and they're like, actually, Pumpkin is Alan's old friend Pump, who basically was just like a psychopath, like as a kid.
He got bullied, but also he tortured dogs.
Yeah. Also, he was kind of fucked up and kind of deserved a little bit of the bullying he got, but it was wrong. And you're like, this is stupid. This is a much worse fucking thing than if he had just been some weird ass pumpkin dude who you fought. Like, why do we have to complicate this?
It also didn't come up at all in their first battle 6 years ago, and it hasn't come up in the entire time since until they fought again. And it's just a last-minute mention of, by the way, I'm actually that person being repassed.
But then there's some, like Nanashi has his friend who was brainwashed or something. I don't even remember the specifics of it, but he had a friend who looks identical to him, who he has to beat. And I'm like waiting for like, well, there's going to be some kind of like clash of philosophies here. And there's just not. There's just nothing to dig into. There's nothing between these characters. And I'm like, no, I think you got it opposite. I think you thought the pumpkin needed a backstory, whereas the pumpkin was cool enough. This dude, who is just color-swapped version of Nanashi, is not cool enough without a backstory. You need to give him one.
I don't know what to say about Nanashi, by the way, because he was in so much of this series, and the only thing I ever got off of him was, well, he sure likes women, and that's it. It feels like he never grows beyond that point. It informs almost every action he performs in this series.
There's one line that is to suggest that he fucked so many women in one night that he's not sure if he could fight, and I was almost just like, I'm impressed at how much of a whore you are, because normally this character would not get laid, but this character is like, no, I fuck frequently when I shouldn't probably.
Then there is Alvis, who is actually the person who called Ginta to Mar Heaven. And God, I did not know you could have your Lancer character be done so incompetently. Alvis is supposed to be the, reflection of Ginta. He is the jaded, serious guy who knows how desperate their situation is. He's always, stern and calm. He's the Sasuke to Ginta's Naruto, basically. And also, he has a bond to Ginta's past because during the last war, he had this kind of, pseudo father-son relationship with Dana, with Ginta's father, and looked up to him and wanted to follow his example and stuff. And so he's the reason why he is a soldier in the current war and stuff. But when you have that type of character, they're supposed to butt heads with your hero on certain things, at least. And he doesn't. He's just around for the fights once they're in the tournament. He is okay with Ginta being the leader of this group, even though Alvis is the only actual proper representation of the guard, the paladins, that came to fight against the chess pieces, because he showed up with their group, not with Ginta's. But he's the only one who survives the first round of the combat, so he just joins Team Mar, and he's fine with that.
Yeah.
And he's okay with Ginta calling the shots. When Ginta's like, we shouldn't kill people, he's like, all right. And he's happy to go along with things that way, and he never causes any conflict within the group. He's boring, and he sucks.
His entire character, narrative is boiled down to the fact that Phantom has infected him with, something called, a curse mark. That once it spreads completely, kills the user, basically turns them into a zombie that serves who put the curse on them. So Alvis is on a timer that when it ends, he will not just die, he will exist in a semi-permanent state of subservient undeadness to someone else for the rest of eternity. And not once does he seem concerned about this. It never in one of his fights, he's just like, my hand, the curse is spreading. Like, it's one of those things you're like, just do the cool shit, okay? Like, you gave your character a curse mark, you made them look like Sasuke. Just do it. Like, they don't ever actually touch on it at all. It is only relevant once it's finally time to deal with, like, Phantom. They're like, oh, hey, we better get the curse mark off you. Like, there's never a point where Alphys is like, I want to fight Phantom because he put that curse on me. Like, he squares off with someone else who just also has the curse on them. And he's just like, why do you want the curse? He's a bad guy. And the other guy's like,
but you are wrong for wanting to do that.
Yeah, like.
And then they have no answer to that, except, no, it's not.
And then they die. No, they don't. They get to live. But yeah, it's just stupid. Like, it's just none of these characters like have satisfying conclusions to the stories that come up for them. Like, I think again, the exception to almost everything is Dorothy. Dorothy gets a cool end to her story because she's like, I have to kill my sister. Like, that's just what's going to happen. And she confronts her sister, and it's a fight that's looking really bad. Dorothy is really, really strong. Like, the strongest stuff that Dorothy has sent out hasn't done anything, except the Scarecrow did. There's a great line that I want to see if I can pull up here, because I saved it on my phone. It's such a bizarre, like, confusing line. But she says, Scarecrow on a stick, you have indeed gained much power. And you're like... Fucking what? Like, even in the context of the world, is Scarecrow a more difficult guardian to summon than anything else? Like, it's
not really ever demonstrated how strong Scarecrow is.
It just shot lightning, I think.
Well, and because Dorothy wins so many of her battles so decisively, so it's kind of hard to get a grasp on how strong it is over the others. But she's fucking...
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, there is this note where... when she first met Ginta, she basically tried to get him to help her get Babo. She didn't know it was Babo at the time, and she was like, and I'll pay you with this arm, and it's just this dinky little dagger thing. And she's clearly trying to pass off on this rube who knows nothing.
Yeah.
The cheapest arm she's got in her collection. And she throws that dagger and stabs her sister in the heart with it and kills her.
It looks like it's going to be like a super intense fight, and she's running low on resources. So she summons like 2 of her crappiest summons, and her sister's like, "You're running out of steam, huh? It looks like," and boom, just knife right through her heart. And she's just like, "No, I just need an opening." And it's like cold-hearted, but it's fucking cool. I don't know, it rules. I want to take this moment to talk about the only other cool thing in this series, which is, of course, the best Babo form, Puss in Boots, which is this great cat who just murders people. I don't know.
It has this really weird collection of abilities. It's like Ginta summons a Naruto to fight for him. It's ridiculous.
It's the only time that I was like, oh yeah, like... Ginta actually thought on this one. He actually put his brain to use and like coming up with an imaginative summon. But there's like a moment where Ginta's attacked by like 5 evil demons at once, and one of them tries to like taunt him by being like, "You're sad, you're a pathetic loser, you couldn't even save Snow." And Puss in Boots just throws a knife through its head and goes, "Be brave, Ginta, meow." You have to look at this cat. It's like a big ass cat man in giant cartoon pants. It's just very funny to see it just murder somebody.
Oh God. Dorothy, and she actually like kind of becomes the most important character in the manga for a little bit, because like, hey, her sister started this whole war thing this time around. And she has to kill her, and her butting heads with Ginta comes to a head because there would all be all these points during the tournament where Ginta was like, "We shouldn't kill people," and Dorothy is like, "Okay," and God, the whole non-killing people thing is so stupid.
It doesn't like I thought it was
because it's so inconsistent. Yeah. Like if Dorothy kills someone, Ginta gets upset about it, and then the very next match Alan throws a guy into a pit of lava.
Yeah, there's this weird.
So we had a hiccup there.
Yeah, we had a hiccup there for a second. Yeah, there's this weird like
We're back.
disparity. I think so. Can you hear me?
Not yet.
Oh, we'll catch up with Nick in a second here. Um,
Okay, I can hear you now. Can
there
you
we
hear me?
go. Yep. So
Okay.
there's this weird disparity. I don't know the word. I'm blanking on it right now. There's a weird
Disparity.
disparity. There's a weird disparity in how killing is handled in the tournament because it is stated like when you beat your opponent, you can just choose to kill them multiple
Mhm.
times. Like that is that is the situation presented to our heroes. Is they're like, hey, you could beat this guy without killing him. Anytime a member of Team Mar does lose, they're of course never killed. No one ever takes it
No.
upon themselves to be like, all right, well, I won the fight, so I'm gonna kill your fucking, this dude who's super powerful. Well, like Alan is supposed to be the powerhouse of the team. He loses a fight because his opponent is a cat. And like they didn't take it as an opportunity to be like, okay, so we'll slit his throat because he lost this fight. Like make it so they don't have him anymore.
The And so Alan murders a dude in cold blood. The fight after Ginta has gotten on Dorothy's case for killing her opponent, no one says a goddamn thing to him. He just gets to do it because the non-killing thing, apparently Ginta only cares about if he and his girlfriends do it, basically.
Yes.
They have a fight which is like a big, huge, like 6-on-6 fight or something like that. It is long and it's all taking place on the ice. And it's the one that Rapunzel is leading. And every time that one of Rapunzel's team loses, she kills them. Like just as like, you're fucking useless, and like is like, oh, if you beat me at rock, paper, scissors, then I'll let you go. And she beats them and kills them instead. And every time that this happens, and Ginta's team can see it happening, they're just like, oh no, she's so evil for killing her teammates like that. Literally, Nanashi throws one of his fights so it ends in a draw because it's a cute girl that he's fighting and he doesn't want her to die. And she's literally going like, please don't beat me. I don't want Rapunzel to murder me. Please don't. And so he takes mercy on her and it acts like it's a draw instead. And Rapunzel's like, he showed mercy on you. You're useless. Kills her too. No one does anything. No one stops her. Ginta just goes, you're really mean and bad. You're a fucking hypocrite, Ginta. That's what you are. You did nothing to stop her, and you had the power to. Fuck you, Ginta. You suck.
Yeah, you can't. Well, Nick, of course, you can't break the sanctity of the war games. If you don't do this, then they just get to attack. It's like Mortal Kombat. If you lose 3, then Outworld just gets to invade Earthrealm. I think. Even though that's what they were doing before, and they stopped to do the war games. So. Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of that sort of stuff. I feel like I could bring up specific moments here and there, but like by and large, the fights just aren't interesting. Sometimes when they do summons, they're cool, but way too many times characters are like, my power is fire. My power is to split my body apart. My power is I'm thematically based around card tricks or some shit like that, like circus antics, and they're not interesting. There's not like cool dynamic action, or heroes don't have interesting abilities either. Like too many of the characters just use elemental attacks. There's like a point where a bunch of characters get new arms, very specifically, like, hey, we're going to give you guys new powerful arms. And I was like, oh, I wonder how they're going to augment their already existing abilities. And the answer is they don't really. Like, the characters who didn't have a summon get a summon, and the characters who already did have a summon just get some elemental ability of some kind or something like that. So that's all it comes down to.
I have one more rant to go on, and it has to do with Alan.
Okay.
Alan could be this like really cool badass character because he's kind of he's a soldier from the previous war, so he's got all this power. He's got these scars on his face. He's this dedicated protector of snow. So here's a problem. He shares a body with Edward, who sucks.
Yeah.
Edward is this little dog attendant of Snow's who wears glasses and has a shitty hat. This is a character bred in a lab for me to hate specifically.
Yes.
And having Edward around means that Alan can't be around because Alan was cursed so that every time that he falls asleep, he turns into Edward. And Edward only turns back into Alan after he's fallen asleep 3 times. Alan is one of their potentially strongest fighters. He's not available for the first round of the tournament. And then they're like, well, surely Alan will be available, like, tomorrow or the day after that, right? He's got to be coming up. And Edward goes, I haven't been sleeping too well recently. Fuck you, Edward!
I would have knocked her ass out. It's the only thing that keeps our world from being completely destroyed, right, you motherfucker?
Take some fucking goddamn melatonin and go to sleep, you fucking useless fuck. He's got no knowledge. He has no wisdom of any kind to offer. He's fucking useless. And you're in a war for the fate of the world. And you can't go to fucking sleep. And then.
I got nervous, Nick.
But then, Edward thinks so too. So then, Ginta uses Alice in the best way possible, which is to undo this curse. So now Edward and Alan are separated. I don't know why. Shouldn't Edward just be gone if he's like the curse on Alan? But no, he's around. No, he's not. He shows up at the end and does nothing for the rest of the series otherwise.
No, Nick, he's going to. There's a whole moment where everyone has to say all right, the tournament's over, but we're going to take the fight to the king of the chess pieces. And everyone has to be like, yeah, let's go. I'm into. And fucking Ed's like, yeah, guy. I can't. Well, I got kind of dizzy lifting my arm up. Anyone carry me?
Snow's been kidnapped at this point because she's some sort of plot by the chess pieces to not only take over Marheaven, but also go to Ginta's world and take it over through her connection with Koyuki. It's resolved very, very quickly. But Edward's like, well, we gotta go and save her. And is just there and gets hit by the same magic attacks as everyone else and restrained and does nothing to help. He's just also there. Fuck him. So, he never says any cool things. He's never helpful. Fuck him. So Alan is freed from this curse that prevents him from being around, except for only 1/4 of the time. The very first time that this comes up, after everyone's been through training, he's like, I'm not going to fight in this battle, because if we lose this one, then we're not going to be able to win the war games as a whole.
It's all about the younger generation fighting this fight.
But the war, Alan... It's a war. The world will end if you don't win. What are you doing?
That one I can at least justify that he gave it a reason. But he also doesn't fight in the next round. There's 7 rounds. I think this motherfucker fights in 3 of them. And you're like, dog, you're the ringer. I don't know what to tell you. You're the one that hits the home run. You should be in every match.
So... I just wanted to get that out.
Again, we have to continue on this train a little bit. I understand we're very low on time already. But, Jack sucks. Why aren't you taking Jack's spot in the matches? This is for everything. You'd be like, oh, well, Jack comes through in the end.
Anytime the Nanashi goes up against a cute girl, you can't count on him to beat her.
Yeah. I mean, you both have weird rules. Nanashi can't fight girls, and you can't fight cat-themed opponents or something like that. It's stupid, but, again, this is for all the marbles. It's not even oh, well, Jack's pulled his weight. He either loses or draws in every significant match he's in until the very end, which, as established, you guys run the table on anyway.
They win
your final opponents.
Battle. When they have the final team battle, Mar wins every individual battle. There is no tension to it whatsoever.
It's so funny because you almost expect one of the characters to the end to say something about it. One of the bad guys to be like, damn, I can't believe this match is already down to Phantom. Because the last 2 opponents who had to fight before Phantom fights, you're like, they should realize this match is worthless for them. Who gives a shit? Because they've already, they're not going to win by points. It doesn't even matter. Why is there even a final team round to begin with? Both captains are in the fight, so if they fight each other, that's the only match that matters. This tournament is so poorly constructed.
And because it's only Mar against Phantom, God, nobody does the job for Phantom. You can't build a heel this way unless they can win fights. And you have rules implemented so that if you win your individual fight, you move to the next round. Theoretically, that is an excuse for you to have a member of Team R get their shit pushed in by a member of the chess pieces, so that then when they appear in a later round, it's like, oh shit, this is the guy that we lost to. And that happens with one occasion.
It happens with
one of the
Roland
knights.
and Atlas. Yeah, that's the only time, really.
It's the only attempt, and I'm not going to criticize that because at least there's an attempt there. I can't even say like if it's good or bad because like at least it was done. Like there was an effort to build up this guy as a threat through the tournament, but there's not, you know, if there were another faction that were trying to go through the tournament and you saw them lose after they had some sort of bond form with Mars,
which is
something.
Which is in the giant battle tournament they did in Flame of Recca, I believe they did have that. They did have characters to lose to the bad guys so you could see how cool they were ahead of time.
To build up a threat of any kind. But because you don't have that, it's just like, well, it's just informed abilities for almost all of these characters. Like, oh, they're really scary and strong. It's like, yeah, are you sure? Because that person just lost to fucking Jack. So I don't know if they were supposed to be scary or not. It was just a constant string of that.
Can I also note something? I'm so sorry to distract us, but no one ever wins through strategy. Everyone's always like, it's really bad. Things are at their lowest. I'm being strangled by plants and I'm going to die. But I refuse to lose here. And thankfully I have my anti-plant spray. And I'm going to spray all your plant. Like, it's a big moment when Jack wins his final match because he reveals that he has a fire summon. And I'm like, no shit, fuckface. You're fighting a plant guy. Why didn't you open with this? Like, what was the point? Like, I'm real glad thematically you got the exact thing that would work in this fight.
Ginta has what is supposed to be a huge grudge match against Ian, a guy that was the first person who really beat him when he came to Marheaven, and then he did his training and came back and was stronger than Ian. As a result of that, Ian was punished by the chess pieces because he defied orders, decided to fight Ginta for the thrill of it, and because, you know, he's kind of like a kindred spirit to Ginta. He's not really a blood knight for this whole cause. He, you know, just kind of has that sense of adventure. Ian has a girlfriend. I can't remember her name because she is
Guido or something. Yeah.
Guido is something like that. It doesn't matter. She's Ian's girlfriend, and that's all that she is. And so to punish Ian, one of their top-ranking members turns her into a mindless monster. And so Ian is like traumatized by this, and he wears this mask and he's all serious and bloodthirsty now, and he's like, I have to get revenge on Ginta, the one who's actually responsible for this. No, he's not. But so he's having this fight with Ginta. He chains them together, and so it's like, our magic will become blood that will drip off this chain and you can't get out of it. And Ginta goes, Alice. Chain's gone. Ian uses his like fuck you with a bunch of chains and blades. Jelly shield stops them, wins. Fuck Ginta's fights. They suck. They're stupid. And Ginta basically goes, "You're actually mad at yourself." Punches him, and Ian's like, "I was."
Yeah, this series sucks ass. We do have to continue on and talk about our recap series, but I think to sum up my thoughts on Mar. This is not a good series, unfortunately. This was pretty tough to read, mostly just because, like, I don't know, like, I probably did enjoy this a little bit more when I was, like, 15 years old and reading this with my friend Frank. Like, I think it probably was slightly more enjoyable then. But as a full-grown adult who's experienced, like, 20 years of manga since then, like, shit's just better than this. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I would never recommend reading this. I think that there's just better versions of all of this all over the place. But if you were to write something like this, just know, hey, I also wrote a series that was primarily a fighting tournament when I was like 14 years old. Like, it happens, you know?
Yeah, and look, if you have memories of like kind of getting into manga, if this is one of the first like anime series that you watched, I get that. It's, you know, it can be a gateway because it is so easy, you know, because it's just fighting and it's kind of low stakes through a lot of it. I can see this being something that led to other stuff, but know that it is just not a good example of this thing in the genre, and it was frustrating to go through it. as much as we did in the short span of time that we did, like you said, as adults who have been reading shonen manga for 20 years.
Yes.
So, okay. Let's close the book on that because we've got a lot of manga to talk about.
Yeah, let's talk about let's get to the recap portion of Weekly Manga Recap, starting with Undead Unluck, number 223, Ragnarok. We're going to be running through a lot of these series very quickly, guys. So, last time the quests opened up, and it was pretty clear that the master rules are all going to be in there. Andy confirms very early on that it is probably UMA Time, who is the 7th seat, the old man in the group who's just speeding up time here. And they're like, all right, we're going to have to fight these 10 superior rules. This is really, really rough. Like, I don't know what we're going to do. And then Apocalypse is like, hey, dogs, 1 month's passed already. Activating the penalty, Ragnarok. And we cut over to Luna, and Soul walks up and is like, hey, why didn't you let us fight them? Because it suddenly seems like the rules won't get to actually do anything. Like, we had these designs and everything like that, a speed run, like, curious. And Luna's just like, well, I just thought you guys actually, like, you should return to being part of him, referring to Soul. And with a big smile, grabs onto Soul, who's trying to fight Luna, and grabs him and is like, yeah, I think that would be more amusing. So Soul realizes, like, from the very start, and there's just a moment where Nico, like, shouts out to Fuko and is like, hey, the 10 superior rules are now, like, coming from the locations they landed. Like, they're going back to the sun. What the fuck's happening? And we see Soul coming out, and Luna is, like, announcing, like, hey, at long last, time's come. You've all done a fine job, which is what I want to see by seeing if you can overcome him at his best. I want you to show me the true values of the rules unknown to me. And Fuko is extremely tense, so Andy tickles her and is like, hey, they're the ones freaking out right now. We have the really strong union, so let's go. Soul is outside and attacking, so they jump into battle. It's time for the final battle for the fate of this planet, Ragnarok. Nick, I don't know what's happening here.
The reaction that I saw from literally everyone was, is Undead Unluck ending? And because it's Undead Unluck, I don't know. I don't know. I truly do not know. I know that Undead Unluck has not been selling very well of late, especially for a series that recently had an anime come out. But, I mean, who knows? Undead Unluck's pacing for everything is so strange and has been for years at this point. I think that it is definitely very awkward to have this whole big thing of saying the 10 superior rules are all coming after us at once, and then immediately they get absorbed back up into Soul in order to just combine with him, and they're fighting that instead for Ragnarok again.
I will say, know. The only thing is that we didn't start the fights and then this happened. It's not like they defeated, like, Sick again, and then they were like, fuck this, we're gonna, like, do it. I'm hoping we still get to, because it feels weird to not follow up on the stuff with Soul in particular, but also, like, Change and War. Like, we've established this stuff, so yeah, I mean, if we don't, then I can only assume that this series just got ended before they thought they were going to some extent, but I have zero idea.
Yeah. If it turns out that, yes, in a couple of weeks, it turns out it's like, oh, the series is over, then yeah, it got canceled before we could do those things, and plans had to very rapidly be changed. But it could just very well be a case of, like, maybe there was, order on high to, like, hey, this arc isn't doing it, do something else. Or it could be a matter of Undead Unluck's just weird, and so they're going to bring the superior rules back after this.
They could.
Also be very strange.
I could see also a world where the author is just like, I don't want to do 8 more giant fights with a 9th one after that when they fight Soul. Like, I don't know if I really want to do all that. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
This is a difficult industry where sometimes you just got to kind of do things and then see if you get the chance to pay them off. And maybe this is one of those opportunities where Undead Unluck's not going to be able to.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate, but if that is the case. But again, I don't know. So let's move on.
Yes.
To talk about Blue Box.
Blue Box.
Chapter 165, Haunted House. So it's the haunted house thing that is being done for the school festival with Taiki and Hina and Kyo's class. First thing we see after we can, just like get a look at some of the haunted house stuff that they've got set up is that Chinatsu and Nagisa are going through it. Chinatsu, very unbothered by everything. Nagisa, very bothered by stuff.
Yeah.
They're going through the haunted house bit and they come across Taiki, who is an axe murder victim. So he's got this fake blood and a big axe sticking out of his head. And so he's like, oh, Chinatsu. And Nagisa's like, why are you doing that? Don't do that. Don't come up to us. Freaks out. And Chinatsu just kind of looks at him and says, hey, when we walk around later, you should wear that.
There is a moment when Taiki reveals himself to Chinatsu, and Chinatsu's looking at him without saying anything. Everyone else is talking, and you're just like, I'm very excited to hear the thought that's going to come out of her mind from this. It's one of those moments you're like, this girl pondered something, and I want to hear what it is.
Mm-hmm. It was just like, I want you to dress up like that axe murder victim when we're going around and walking around together.
Yeah,
so cute.
It's just for this weird line. She's like, I want to have a little creepy thing about this.
Yeah. Hina, meanwhile, is attending the desk out at like the entrance to the haunted house, and Haruto comes up, and I think this is the guy who knocked over the display in the previous chapter who was with him, I think, but I'm not really sure. So Haruto comes up while they're there. They kind of mention like, oh yeah, I'm doing this to like support because, the captain of the Batman Club, Kyo, is leading this. So it's like, oh, that's nice. And Hina's like, that's surprisingly loyal of you. And he's like, surprisingly? Yeah, surprisingly. So Hina will not budge from her judgments of Haruto, but he says, whenever I talk to you, I see things from a new angle and I appreciate that. And Hina says, oh, it's just because I'm your upperclassman. But, just continuing that thing of like, there is a growing bond between them, especially in her unique views on Haruto that nobody else seems to have. Kyo goes to do some stuff because, he is like in charge of organizing a lot of stuff. So he goes to get a bunch of supplies. While he's doing that, he runs into Ayame, who is dressed up as Sadako from Ringu, and she is advertising the haunted house. And Kyo takes a second and then recognizes her. And then Ayame is like, oh, don't you love, how my Sadako look is going? And Kyo says, no, I like the usual you better. And she's a little bit put off by that. The reason is established to be that it throws him off because she looks too much like Karen with long hair. But they have some stuff where like they kind of like walk together a bit while they're going on stuff. She's advertising, he's teasing her over her Sadako impression, and she gets frustrated with him because she's like, Sadako doesn't talk, and they have a little bit of a laugh together. Then a little kid who is there for the school festival is like, Sadako's not a real ghost, that's a fake wig. And he goes to bother her, and Kyo stops him and is like, hey, you shouldn't do that. And while he's interacting with the little kid, Ayame gets a smile on her face while watching him interact. There is a guy that Ayame has, goes and scolds for being late for his shift at his class's event, and Kyo sees her and laughs because of the way that she's acting. They both just, like kind of witness a side of each other that they both like. Then they part ways, and Fujiwara, the guy that Ayame was scolding, goes off with Kyo in order to do his shift. And after he drops him off, Kyo runs into Saki, and Saki's like, yeah, I'm here with, my girlfriends and stuff. And then she says, hey, my ex is really persistent, and I've been thinking about what'll happen if he shows up again, and it's freaking me out. But when I'm with you, I feel relaxed, and I want you to protect me. I want you near me. So cut away from that. Ayame comes across Takasago, the boy that asked her out, has been giving her the hot vending machine tips. And he says, oh, I didn't recognize you for a second. She says, oh, yeah, my Sadako looks great, right? And he says, yep, you're cute no matter what you look like. Very different answer from what Kyo gave. And that's just where we end the chapter. So just, some nice little moments here and there. I really like the things that are not said as we're going through the interaction between Ayame and Kyo. It's cute stuff. And I love these two kids, and I want them to be happy together.
Ayame is very adorable in this chapter as well. I love her with the long hair down, and how much, like, I didn't realize how good the design of this series was, because when she shows up with her hair down, I was legit like, why is Karen here? And they're like, that's because it's her sister, and she specifically wears her hair up to not be mistaken for her sister.
It's amazing, like, how, like, a series that has such realistic character designs, you can actually get that feeling of these two characters really do look like each other. It's like when you think about it, Yusa and Haruto, because they've got the same eyes, they really do look like each other.
Yeah.
So good stuff.
Good stuff.
Oh my god,
Speaking of good stuff.
Oh my god, Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, chapter 14, duty. So, Boruto's been captured by Konoha. We're very mature on this show. He's being interrogated by Konohamaru and Ibiki. Ibiki being the scarred guy who, way back in like 2000, gave that great speech about how important it is to stay loyal and not give up your comrades and stuff. So they were there to interrogate Boruto. Meanwhile, we do see a little bit of Inojin being healed by Sakura. Himawari and the rest of Inojin's team are there, and Ino, his mother, is there too, looking down on her son with concern. There is some speculation by the people who are kind of like just, being nosy on the conversation, like, what's Boruto going to do? Is he going to like throw Kawaki under the bus and try and make his case that things are wrong and that there's stuff going on here? While that's happening, Amato starts talking about the way the Ten Tails works. He gives a little bit more information about these 10-tailed tree people, which is, like, they seem now the only one who does not have a basis by treeing a person is Jura, who is just an incarnation of the Ten Tails. Everyone else has some sort of basis from another character that has been treed. Boruto refuses to give them any information. He does not throw Kawaki under the bus. This goes on so much time. There is so much of Kawaki of Boruto just saying, I'm not going to tell you anything unless I think it'd be good to tell you, but I'm not going to. That's it.
Yeah. I have all the power here. Even though I'm captured, I'm really the strong one here.
I'm so cool. Ibiki decides to punch info out of Boruto, but after he gets in a few hits, Shikamaru is like, hey, why don't we get Mitsuki to poison him and get some information out of him? This is also after he tries to get Ino to use her communication abilities to help him out, and Ino is just like, points out very rightfully, like, I don't have any reason to trust you and why you want to help out Boruto. And also, her son kind of got hurt partially because of that. So she's like, no, I'm cutting you off. And it is actually nice that we get that moment of a character from Naruto who's not one of the same three we've been following doing something. Yeah. And showing how they have like grown and have different priorities now. Anyway, so Mitsuki starts to go in. Shikamaru stops and says, hey, by the way, this is a mission, so you control yourself and follow your orders, okay? It's important that you do this and not, try and attack him immediately. Mitsuki goes into the interrogation room, immediately goes and attacks Boruto immediately, shoves him into the wall.
It works because you're like, I know we have to do Mitsuki. Like, I know we have to, but it is very funny. You're like, I feel like there's a lot of ninja who don't have any kind of connection to this guy who you could easily bring in to poison this guy. It's not like poison is like the only way to torture this guy. You could easily have like, hey, Rock Lee, do you want to come in and kick Boruto in the chest until he tells us what we want to hear?
So they pull Mitsuki off of Boruto, but not before he sends his snaky boy to undo Boruto's cuffs, because he was all a ruse, you see. He actually was given the code to unlock the cuffs by Shikamaru, who subtly ordered him to do it. And so everyone's like, how did they get out? These cuffs that Amato gave us are worthless. And so Boruto goes, hey, so I'm going to go now. And he like talks for way too long before teleporting away for how much dialogue he actually has here. But he teleports away, grabs his stuff, teleports to safety. Some of the elders who were like listening in on the interrogation are like, you're going to suffer consequences for this, Shikamaru. Then Kankuro contacts Shikamaru. Hey, remember Kankuro? That guy? Yeah. So he contacts him and says, like, hey, Gaara's been beaten off page. And also, so his adopted son was taken and he was treed. And so that is the basis of this new tree Ten-tail that we alluded to.
This is crazy. A character I never met before got turned into a tree, Nick. This is crazy. Oh my god. And they're almost Gaara.
I don't know if Shinta has shown up in the Boruto anime, but yeah, I have no care whatsoever for this person having this happen to. It's nice to have someone who is lower on the totem pole of characters I give a fuck about than Moegi that this happened to.
Yeah, this is truly well. The people are saying we did meet this guy. I don't remember it, but sure, I believe you. We probably did at some point. It's no, I don't think he did anything, but the series has also generally not been good. Boruto was not horrendous this week. It's just generally boring, and that's kind of what it was this time. It was way too much talking for a pretty generic like interrogation scene.
Also, the plan to spring Boruto that Shikamaru comes up with is so full of holes, and I love that nobody has suspected that he got Boruto out of there deliberately. It seems so obvious.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The guy that you called in and had a talk with that happened to do something that
And
let Boruto free.
And the cuffs that supposedly do not work unless the code is punched in had the like. And why wouldn't you immediately then search Mitsuki and see the fucking code paper that was handed to? I don't know.
Right. Chainsaw Man! Chapter 178, Gun Goddess. Last time, Yoru got up to something, sacrificed a whole bunch of National Pistol Association members' fingers in order to do something.
Nick, that's unfortunate. It looks like the Statue of Liberty's head fell off. I'm going to turn this page, though, and it's just the head that I need to consider. Oh, my goodness.
There is a whole-ass demon skeleton with muscles that end in a sniper rifle that comes out of this thing. I fucking love the statue, the Sniper of Liberty here. It's so cool.
Meanwhile, I also love the implication that it shoots a bullet to Japan, meaning it either destroys its way through Europe or it destroys its way through the U.S. to get to its target. Like
the literal opposite side of the world from Japan in order to attack Chainsaw Man. Yoru points her finger and goes, bang! And this fucking thing wrecks buildings on its way to hitting Denji. I love the look on Yoru and then Asa's faces as they're like, oh shit, is that what I just did? As there is things in the way. And then we get to turn the page and Asa's like, oh, how could I forget? Yoru's a devil. And she is still
one of the best panels in this week. Like her expression here, Yoru's, is so funny because it's not just that she's evil. She's like Nelson Muntz laughing. She's like, ha ha ha! And you're like, I'm sorry. What did you just do?
And I love that Asa is like, she's got her finger pointing like because Yoru did the bang thing, but she's staring in horror, and Yoru has just transitioned into pointing and laughing in the same pose, but with a different expression. It's very, very good.
It's so good.
Buildings are wrecked all around Chainsaw Man, who is basically left as a head and a shirt, it looks like. He is not doing good. Even the chainsaw blade coming out of his forehead is broken. But then you turn the page, and the aging devil is there, pouring blood from its wrist directly into Chainsaw Man's mouth, and says, I'll save you, Chainsaw Man. And it seems like, oh, this is interesting. And then he says, eat my legs, then eat the rest of my body. Save my head for last. My contract dictates that children will die with each bite you take of me. Isn't it romantic?
Oh, I'm actually not as hungry as I thought I was when you started the sentence, actually.
And the same way that the aging devil did before, he calls forth Amir, and he's looking at all the children that have been gathered for the sacrifice with for the contract that was established several chapters ago. And so he's going to watch all these children be murdered while he's being eaten alive. Devils are fucked up, yo. That's the chapter.
I love how they're
wild.
We're watched it through a mirror, because that's how this devil is communicated. It's just so cool. But yeah, fucked up shit. I guess we'll see what happens. Astro Royale, Nick.
Oh my god, Astro Royale, Chapter 22, Plant Zero. So they're going to Plant Zero, which they established in the last chapter, in order to, because apparently it's the key to everything, according to the family lawyer Rary, because she was approached by the division that has taken Torazo, who wanted them to demolish the plant, even though it has already been abandoned for the last 10 years. So she's like, okay, so let's go to Plant Zero and find out what the hell they want then. So they go there, they reach this, factory in the middle of the ocean, and there is a massive hole on one end of it, this big circular hole that has just taken out a good chunk of the structure. And they're like, what the hell happened here? And they specifically established this was not the asteroid that did this. It was something else. They land there and they see this big structure, this big dome that is in the middle of it, and they start heading towards it. As they go towards it, Kinpa is like, I think it's this way. And she starts leading them towards it, and she says to herself, I remember this place from my nightmares. She has some sort of connection here. In the most awkward manner possible, they go, what's going on with Kinpa? She's acting a lot more reckless than her father, Genji. And Hibaru goes, that's because she's not Genji's biological daughter. What? Why would you say it that way? It's such an awkward way to bring it up. Yeah. This is all a very awkward way to establish that Kinpa is adopted and her biological parents were scientists who got Peter Parker, basically. The Amazing Spider-Man Peter Parker, where they just, vanished for secret agent reasons.
Yeah.
So there's a big old hole in the wall. They start making their way through it. They realize Shio must have been here at some point, because this is, what he did with his, weird gravity powers or something like that. They follow through the hole. In the center of the structure, there is this area where all the ducts in the building come together into this big cube, where there's a tiny hole that something has been removed from. So to figure out what's going on, Rary uses her lighter, her Astro, which is a lipstick, because she is a woman. Both.
It's one of these things that's like, Get another technical moment from Nick. I believe he's making a joke about how both women have makeup as their Astro. This is not a great moment to get a stutter on, unfortunately, but I do have to agree, it's not the best look. I promise if I had an Astro, it would not be makeup. Are we good? No. Still looks like it's a little bit. Oh, we were so close. Oh, to have it on Astro Royale of all things. I will say... Oh.
I think we're back.
We're good?
It looks good to me. I think we're good.
Oh, thank you. I try to be very cute. I just got my hair done.
I did notice that your hair was different, but I'm never confident in that. So, okay. So, Rary uses her Astro, which launches as a missile, which can cause her to replay events. I do like that it takes a unique form when she uses it. It's an interesting way of replay this thing by shooting a missile at it. But it doesn't really establish much, except that, this is where they got the Daybreak Ore, the weird thing that had eyes and a mouth that Shio took. And he says to himself, to think I can wipe out an entire city with ease with this thing. And so it's like, what? That's what they were looking for. That's also what the cops are looking for then. What is it? And Kinpa says, I think I know what it is, because both my parents were researchers here at Plant Zero. Presumably, this thing had some sort of accident set off. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. I don't have any comments to make on this.
I say the only thing I thought was interesting in this chapter is at the very start where Rary's like getting in a helicopter and they're like, what the fuck? You could fly this? She's like, yes, I could do anything. And I was like, that's kind of cool. I do like this character who's just like hyper competent. And she's like, yes, get in. Of course I could do this. Like, I don't know. It's just kind of cool. I
appreciate that.
And I do kind of like that her power is like a missile-based Moody Blues is kind of interesting. I don't know if we're going to see enough to make this worth it. But other than that, yeah, not too memorable.
All right. There's a new series starting in Shonen Jump this week. Hakutaku. We get the first chapter of that from the beginning here. This is a series about game designing with it, which is interesting.
Whoa.
Main character is named Dai Hikama, who might be the most neurodivergent jump protagonist. He's got to be up there. It's established he's always behind everyone else because he keeps on focusing on a single task long after everyone else has moved on. He gets bullied because he's kind of always caught up in that space. He doesn't even realize he's being bullied, though, because he gamifies his own life to try and do things really, really efficiently and quickly. And so when he's given new tasks, he's just like, okay, I'll do this thing. And then that's just kind of it. He's going about his day as per usual, runs into a girl named Raika Noto, who is always absent, but has decided, might as well go to class. And they end up going into this computer class together, and she very quickly picks up because, you know, they're given this task to like, hey, make a computer game. And Hikama has all the work dumped on him. And Noto's like, are you being bullied? And he's like, am I being bullied? So Noto, fortunately, has a plan to fix everything, which is to make a good game.
There is. So, I will say my favorite thing about the character is a line you just said, where they're like, "Are you being bullied?" He's like, "Wait, am I being bullied?" Like he is truly. I was like, "Oh no!" He also thinks they're his friends, like I did.
So, I don't know exactly. She's confident that this will work, I guess. So she and Hikama have several straight, like, long nights. They get permission from the only kind of cool character in this, who is a teacher named, I think, Morimoto, who is just wants to have his smoke breaks. That's all he wants. But he hears that Hikama's having problems. Is like, sure, I'll let you guys work late. And so they do a bunch of all-nighters. They specifically designed the game around their classmates so that they can build in-jokes into it. And at one point during the course of all this, Hikama happens to go by an area where, like, his bullies are hanging out, and he hears, like, oh yeah, they are just straight up taking advantage of me and stuff. And so he does have a heart-to-heart with Noto after that. There is a moment where he talks about how he doesn't know how to make friends, and he doesn't know how to read between the lines of a conversation, and that comes very easily to everyone else, and he's kind of embarrassed and frustrated over it. And also then he just says, I just don't know how to fix this bug, which seems to be talking about himself.
Yeah.
But then it's established it's actually about the game that he's working on, which is a bit of an awkward thing because it kind of takes a little bit of that out of that moment. It's great unless you assume that he's not talking about himself. Anyway, everyone loves the game. That's just kind of it. Like, there's a big thing where he has a neural overload, which is very oddly done. Like, there's all these weird visuals that he has mentally.
They expand. Like, they are small things that then grow huge. And I wasn't sure if that was because he actually accomplished, like, a task and saw to realization. He's like, holy shit, wait, all of these ideas in my brain can become reality, or if it was something else.
So all the classmates love it. And then everyone's like, hey, did you make this, Hikama? And we are told, without ever realizing it himself, Dai Hikama was reborn as a game dev. I don't know how to feel about this yet. I'll give it a couple more chapters. But nothing really stood out. It's a different premise. And I do think that there is some potential to the idea of two characters who are very social rejects in different ways, using a creative medium to express themselves and also to connect to other people. But this was very slow, it felt like. So I'm not super confident in this yet.
I almost wish, this is very chapter 1 thought, so, gigantic asterisks next to it. I do kind of wish this was a series or a magazine that's not Jump, because I think there's maybe more potential to this concept that maybe won't get explored because the series has to, like, very quickly find an audience. This feels a lot like Tenmaku Cinema, where the exploration of game design and game creation is going to be, like, something at the forefront. And I just don't know if that plays as well. Like, I don't know. It seems like now that we have Akane-banashi, these sorts of like non-battle series battle manga just don't have a really long shelf life.
Mm-hmm. And I think as well that because that's such a new thing, there's not a whole lot of examples for people to draw on of like, this is how you do this type of series. So it feels like not a lot of people know how to do that in a way that will get at least a firm initial audience to then expand upon them.
Hima-Ten, though.
Hima-Ten, chapter number 11, Himari's protege. I don't know why I did that voice.
Himari's a protege, because the rest of this podcast is brought to us by Super Mario.
It's going to expand the runtime too much.
She has a gigantic Akanza. You're like, Mario, please. She's a freshman in high school. He's like, hey, I'm just a Saiyan. You're not a Saiyan, Mario. I told you, I stopped writing that fan fiction.
Yoshino tells Iemori that she's going to have a model who belongs to her agency over tonight. So she tells Iemori, hey, make dinner for two. And there is just kind of like an establishment of like, hey, she trusts him enough to do this. A very quick note of that. Iemori goes on the train, immediately comes across the girl who is very obviously the model that Yoshino was talking about. Like, it's so obvious. She gets like, full page, introductions and stuff like that. And there are way too many cases of just like, man, look at those girls' boobs. They sure are big.
I will say this. It is almost exclusively done through the eyes of Iemori, who is like a high school sophomore, like a second year high school kid. So like, I'm able to tolerate to a certain extent. He is not really trying to perv out. He's also just like, Jesus, she has gigantic breasts. And I think a lot of people at that age would feel that way.
About a girl who is like
their age,
14.
Yes.
Yeah, that would definitely be a reaction that you could understand someone having.
If there was a guy on the train who was like, check out the gazongas on this one, I'd be like, no, you don't get to do this.
Her name is Kana Aizawa. Iemori sees her helping an old woman out by like giving up her seat for her, but as a result of that, she accidentally like leaves her wallet and stuff behind. So it's got like, her train pass and her wallet and everything on it. Very important stuff. And so she just walks off on the same stop as Iemori and then realizes too late, oh shit, I left it on the train. And she starts to panic. She's like, what do I do? Iemori brings her luggage over to her because she was like, kind of left it behind to be like, oh no, the train. And she starts to freak out, and Iemori's like, hey, the station staff should find your stuff. If you contact them, they should get it for you. But she's also like, I'm on my way to a gig right now, and so I'm under a time crunch. This is really important to me, and I can't, get the rest of the way to my destination without, being able to pay train fare. And so Iemori's like, hey, I can cover $10 for you. I'll help you out. But she's like, hey, can I ask you for something else? Because if you go with me to the studio, then I can get the money from my manager and pay you back. And then he's like, oh, you're from an agency. Does not connect point A to point B at all.
No. Almost to a point where you're like, is it intentional he's this dense? Like, he sends her away at some point. He's eventually like, I sure hope the next model, like the model that what's her name's going to have, is going to be just as nice as her. What?
So they go together. They end up going to the agency with Iemori's help, and she goes inside. Hey, get some money and pays him back. That's nice. And Iemori even says like, hey, I just called the station staff to check on your stuff. They said they found it, so you're good. Everything all worked out. And Aizawa was like, hey, this is actually nice. This is actually net positive because, I met you and this has been cool. And she says, I want to pay you back. Here's the first magazine I was in. Boing. It's a full page spread of her in a bikini. And it's like, oh, God, I'm too old for
this. It's more upsetting also that she's like, yep, I'm already a pinup girl. And I'm like, no, please. Like, you shouldn't be. is the thing. You should be allowed to do as you want, but it should not be in a publicly available magazine for purchase by anyone.
But yeah, she says, I'm proud of what I do. And hey, names are one thing I don't forget. So keep on cheering me on. And she, says goodbye. And Anywhere's like, yeah, I will cheer her on. Because hey, they made this connection and stuff. Aizawa gets on the phone with Yoshino because, of course, she is the model that Yoshino is meeting with. And I do like, honestly, this part of the chapter a lot because Aizawa was just straight up like, yeah, there was this nice guy who helped me out on the way. He was kind of my type. I kind of liked him. And Yoshino's like, okay, yeah, cool. Well, just make sure you don't come to my place before the time that we agreed upon, okay? Immediately, Aizawa is already, like, letting herself in. And, of course, Iemori is there and cleaning up. And Aizawa is still on the phone with Yoshino, puts her on video call and says, hey, you know that guy that I said was my type? He's looking really good right now. He's cleaning up your place, girl. So I liked this part of Aizawa's character, honestly, where she's just like, this guy is hot, by the way.
Yeah, that part's fine. I will say, Kana's like existence seems to give me so much anxiety when she's like, "Oh my god, I lost my ID, my money, and my like wallet on the train." Like, I was immediately like, "Oh, so I should probably just lay in the tracks and let the next train run me over because that's how cataclysmic this event is in my life." And she's just like, I'll get it when I get it." And I'm like, "No, how are you not bothered by this?"
So. Yes, like it's one of those things where it's kind of like I understand the type of series that Hima-Ten is. It's going to have this kind of fan service in it. I'm still like not. I haven't fully accepted that in my heart.
You
yet.
shouldn't. You shouldn't fully accept it completely.
I shouldn't. I really shouldn't.
We are not the target audience, but also we are an audience, so it is weird for us. And also, there's a grown man drawing this somewhere, so there's a little bit of some of that stuff. But I also have to like make peace with it, or I just don't read this sort of like a lot of manga. So like, there's that. I don't know.
So yes, that is always going to have this is always going to have the caveat of this is really like sexualizing a minor. Other than that, though, I do like Aizawa. I like how she is, just this kind of forgetful person, but also like when she's in her element, she seems to be really confident in herself. Yeah. And I like that she is already like established that she's similar to Yoshino in some ways, but also very different from her in other ways immediately. She's been around for one chapter and it's like, I kind of get the difference between them. And I like that. So good introduction for her. Yeah. Moving on. Ichi the Witch. Third hunt. Raiko magic. The first roughly half of this chapter is following a new magic. This five-tailed kind of fox-like creature that is crackling with electricity is immediately cartoonishly evil and is like, I love the smell of seared flesh. I am a strong thunder magic who is the feeling of fire when lightning strikes the ground, and I'm going to be such a strong magic. I'm going to claim human lives, victims. And then it gets to a point about 4 pages in where you start seeing Ichi stalking it from the shadows, and the Raiko like looks over when it senses something and he's ducked away. It's so funny.
It's in the background shot and then it just disappears in the next moment, and it's very funny. Yeah.
He's even like narrating to himself that like, he's like, the trial to acquire me is to steal the heart jewel without being struck by my lightning even once. A cruel trial, if I do say so myself. Wait, over there, my first human victim. And it's this woman who is picking flowers that is very obviously Descaris because the long black hair and stuff. So goes to attack her, and he's like, tremble in terrors, I devour you, I deliver unto you doom. Jumps right through a noose that's hanging from a tree limb. Ichi is on the other end of it, tightens it around the Raiko, captures it, throws a cloth that is soaked in a smell it doesn't like in its mouth, and kind of knocks it out. And afterwards, the first thing that he and Descaris do is cuddle its fur.
Yeah, I love Descaris lays down on it and kind of cuddles up, and I'm like, I love you, girl. Like, absolutely, that's the first thing I would have done.
Ichi is like, time to butcher this thing. And Aurora is like, don't butcher it. What is this? What have you done? What? you captured it like a common animal. And Ichi explains to himself, like, yeah, it's this kind of like, it's like a fox. You know, if you set up, they have this tendency to pounce in a direction. So if you set up bait in accordance with it, it's very likely to go that way. And Deskros is like, plus, I'm very delicate and gorgeous, so I'm the perfect bait. And both Aurora and Ichi are like, delicate and gorgeous? What are you talking about?
No
patience for it.
Absolutely delicate and gorgeous, Deskros.
Mm.
I'm gonna be your hype squad. I'm gonna follow around Deskros and be like, you are gorgeous and beautiful. You go. Don't do a thing, girl. Relax.
It's great. Aurora objects to the entire way Ichi has gone about this because it's like, that's not supposed to be how you fight magics. It's supposed to be this dramatic head-to-head confrontation between magic and witch as you go down against each other. And Ichi's like, oh, is that why it was like shouting random things while we were observing it before? And Deskar is like, oh yeah, we overheard what his trial was and everything because it was like rehearsing what it was going to tell
I found it funny because we saw the speech. We just didn't realize it's saying it out loud. Where like in my mind, I was just like, I'm glad these are inside thoughts. And no, this stupid motherfucker was just like, as long as you manage to get my jewel, my magic can be contained. Like, dumbass.
So Aurora's like, this isn't the way you're supposed to do things. And Ichi says, hey, this magic killed for fun. It was killing animals and going after people, not because it needed to eat or because it was in danger. That's not hunting. That's murder. It was toying with other people's lives. No right to complain if we toy with it. So, cool. Yeah, Deskar just watches all this and she's silent, thinks to herself, Ichi's different from witches. He looks at these things as animals to be hunted. He doesn't just think of them as just representations and manifestations of their power. He's got a fundamentally different approach to this. He takes the heart jewel and claims the Raiko's power, which takes the form of a magic stone, which is like a token of him conquering it, and also it has the incantation that he can use to unleash its power. Having done that, Deskar is like, okay, that should be enough to appease my superiors. Calls out the mirror to communicate with headquarters, and she gets an earful, and she immediately is like, okay, she was, fully expecting to get chewed out, and then she's told, return and report immediately and bring that guy. We await you in the capital of Natali at the Mantinel Witches Association. It's been 3 chapters, Quinn.
Nick, yeah. How do we feel about Ichi the Witch?
Especially after this chapter, I really want to read more of it. I really enjoyed this chapter.
It does seem really good. Which is, of course, why it's a shame to pull in the veto in the bank and say no. No, I think I want to read it.
I would be so upset with you.
I
didn't even know you had claim to that right now.
Don't I get one for just being beautiful? I also did earn it, but don't I just get one for looking gorgeous?
That's my problem. Damn.
No, it's a confidence thing. You are gorgeous. You just don't say you are.
I guess that is true.
Mm-hmm.
All right, awesome. Yeah, we are adding Ichi the Witch. Really liking the series so far.
Yeah, well, let's see if there's another series we'll add. We'll find out till next week. But Chapter 2 of Shinobi Undercover, Yotaka's work.
Yep, so last time Yotaka was asked by Aoki, the girl who he is secretly supposed to be protecting as she goes about her school life. Aoi, not Aoki. Like, hey, you want to be my friend? And he was like, oh, let me think about it. We finally learned the name of his operator, which is number 9. I don't know anything else about them beyond that, which I'm still fine with. So Aoi asked Yotaka, hey, let's eat lunch together at a certain point. She's like, let's meet up in the schoolyard and have lunch. Yotaka is still really, like, not sure about this. He's even being like, oh, but my lunch is leftovers from yesterday's dinner. It's like, she's not going to know that. Chill, dude. But he's thinking to himself, like, how, socially awkward he is and everything, and how he's afraid of disappointing people, and so that's why he keeps his distance from everyone. While he's thinking to himself about that stuff, he accidentally kicked over someone's drink. And wouldn't you know it, he happens to be one of the school's bullies. And they're like, pay us back for that. And he's like, okay, how much was it? It was $300. Oh, will you take it in installments? He just immediately caves to them. And so they're bullying him, they're taking his wallet and stuff. And now he comes by and she immediately spots what's happening and says, cut that out. That's my friend. Very good. Yeah. Nice. This dude, however, is just like not going to like take any lip, like even from her saying like he's funny and he's not embarrassing. He's just like, fuck you, girl, fuck your lunch. He knocks her bento box out of her hand, spills it all over the ground.
This blew my mind because he just like whips his arm back and she winces because it does look like from afar he's gonna hit her. And like I really expected the Shinobi kid to interject at that point. Because if you thought anyone was going to hit her, you would be like, I'm not letting that happen. So I was actually rather surprised they allowed him to hit the lunch. Because I really would have thought he would have been cool with that.
Yotaka knows how much Aoi was looking forward to eating lunch with someone. And so he does intervene now, puts his hand on the guy's shoulder, and starts to actually demonstrate his strength. And number 9 is like, hey, you're not supposed to like butt heads with civilians here. Let him go. And Yotaka says, my mission is to become friends with the assignment. This is my duty as her friend. And he fights the guy, but he acts like he's, cowering away from him while dodging around him, trips the guy up while cowering away from him, and uses the divider from the bento to cut the guy's pants. Not sure how that works exactly. It has an edge, I guess, but he embarrasses the guy because the guy falls on his ass and his ass is out now, and everyone's like, oh, and so he leaves them alone now. And then I was like, oh, are you okay? And Yotaka apologizes because it's like, oh, your lunch is ruined because of me. And she says, it's okay, 5-second rule. I do love that moment. And then afterwards, Yotaka says like, hey, I want to be friends too. When you asked me yesterday, and I always be like, bet, and they're friends now. And Yotaka thinks to himself, this isn't about the mission anymore. I just want to get to know her. And it's nice that it's nice that he just has that realization.
Sure,
there are some like sweet moments here.
I didn't hate this. I thought it was fine. It was enjoyable. I had an okay time. So we'll see if the next chapter picks it up or does anything else. We'll hopefully have more time to talk about it too next week. But right now, Ultimate Exorcist Kiyoshi, something.
Battling in Memento Forest, because Sosuke and Kiyoshi are taking the next leg of the exam. They are teamed up with Mr. Tosaka, the man who is on like his 10th year taking this test. They are immediately confronted by monsters that Kiyoshi and Sosuke completely one-shot. And so Kiyoshi observes like, oh, Sosuke's like a lot stronger now. So they very coolly are like, let's keep going. And Mr. Tosaka's like, wow, these guys really are that good. Do you guys know which way is the right way out of the forest? And like, I was just trying to be cool and to go the right way. And so Mr. Tosaka's like, okay, guys, tell you what, let's work together on this. Leave it to me to guide us out of here. Because like, I'm not as strong as you guys, but I am a veteran exorcist. I've got some tricks. And so he calls forth his partner, Cook, the exorcist bird, who is a little rooster that has a pentagram on his stomach and a that head thing that roosters have. I don't know what it's called.
Crest.
It's shaped like a cross. A crest that is shaped like a cross, and little sneakers. And the Cook the exorcist bird acts like a dog and barks like a dog. I don't know why. It's very charming.
I simply love the final joke where they're just like, it has an excellent sense of smell. And they're like, so it is a dog. And they're like, no, I just heard it bark. He's like, nope, it's a chicken.
It's a chicken. Look, it can do tricks like shake, sit, and sit. It's a dog, right? It's a chicken. They're fighting their way through monsters as they go. Sosuke explains that his gun is a water pistol that shoots holy water. He is constantly gathering water from the air's moisture to replenish his squirt gun, which he uses with his technique to supply it to turn it into holy water. Neat. Mr. Tosaka refers to the ferocious beast of Memento Forest, a really powerful, horrifying monster that showed up the first time that he took the exam and was saved by Mr. Sakaki, very obviously. Then, as they're making their way through, Mr. Tosaka also gives Tosaka gives some of his backstory, which is that his best friend was killed by a demon lord, so he wants to become a Grand Cross because that will allow him to venture into the demon realm to exorcise the demon lord and get revenge for his friend. And so he's like, yeah, I'm sorry, I know that's a ridiculous, dream for someone weak like me to do that. But Kiyoshi's really emotional about it. He's like, we're going to help you pass. And Sosuke's like, what are you crying for, Harai? That's a common story. No, let's get him. Let's get this guy to pass his exam. Yeah. And Mr. Tazaka is blown away. Like, you guys aren't laughing at me. It's like, what's there to laugh at? It's a very nice little moment where they're like, that's noble. We're going to help you. So he's super determined now, and so he starts to run off ahead with Cook the Exorcist bird, and something goes off under his feet, launches him into the air, and immediately Kiyoshi and Sosuke are intercepted by another monster. They can't go directly after him. And so they're like, okay, we gotta go fight our way through this. Cut over to Mr. Tsusaka. Turns out there was a trap set by Yana, who wants to stop Kiyoshi and Sosuke from passing. And so he's like, the key is to take you out so those rookies can't pass because you guys pass or fail as a team. What a dickhead. That's our chapter.
Yeah. Not too much to say on this. I like Mr. What's his name? He's kind of funny and charming in this, yeah. But I mean, outside of that, I'm not like blown away by anything. So I'm also not sure what happens to him at the end.
Not sure what catapults him. There's something on the ground, but you don't really see what happens. It just kind of goes there.
Yeah, I wasn't exactly sure if I was supposed to pick up on that. But what I am certain I'm supposed to pick up on is all of this sexual tension inside of chapter 101 of Marriagetoxin.
It's a Himekawa chapter. Himekawa is
the
art thief who specializes in using sharks to help out. And we kind of just are reintroduced to her because it's been a while since she was featured. She was the first girl that, Garo started dating after helping her out. And she, on her way home after, we get to see some of her life. So it's like, hey, here's her team that she does art theft stuff. Here is her day job because she doesn't make any money doing this. It is all 100% charitable stuff. We see a shift of her working as a waitress at a diner, and there's a message that she gets from Garo that says, hey, you want to check out the new aquarium together? And Himekawa is like, I missed my chance to reply to him because I've been so busy the last few days. She thinks about some of her extra chapter dates with Garo, which is cute, and is like, I mean, it's probably not a big deal.
I'm so sad by this.
She's like, it's probably not a big deal, though. It's just me. She doesn't even think that she's important to Garo. That's so sad.
Nick, I don't want her to win because she's my favorite girl. I want her to win because I relate to this poor girl so much. I'm like, I also feel like I deserve someone to appreciate how much I enjoy sharks.
While she's walking home in the rain, she comes across a doll in a box that is honestly way creepier than she thinks it is. And she's like, this is just like a doll that I had as a kid, and it was part of my father's collection, and I returned it to the previous owner. So she looks at it and is like, hey, if you've got no one to look after, you can come home with me. And she has a good old time doing everything with the doll. This girl needs someone. She needs someone in her life because she is bathing with this thing.
Oh dear.
And then she leaves it home and is like, bye, see you later. And it's just sitting there looking creepy. But she goes to work at the diner again, and she is told by her manager, like, hey, the money went missing from the register. You're the only one who had the key at the time that the theft took place. And I can't let you keep working here. I won't report this to the authorities, but you can't work here anymore. So she loses her job. Yeah. And she's like, I am a thief, but I would never have stolen money from work like that. And then she's like, okay, go into the pier. And Joshua, her shark buddy, isn't around. And she's like, I even brought him his favorite chicken tail. Where could he be? So then she goes to the center where she, works with her art theft team. And she's like, we've got a mission coming up. All right, let's do it. And she shows up and everyone's gone. The place is totally cleared out. And she's like, what's going on? And she can't get in contact with anyone on the phone. And she just thinks, I guess this day had to come sooner or later, because she remembers a conversation she had with them. They're like, hey, all of them kind of have to move on with their lives after a certain point. All of them are single and not building families or anything. And so she's like, everyone's got their own lives to live. And I'm sad we didn't get to say goodbyes, but I'm glad that we got to hang out together. And she just doesn't give herself any credit that she just thinks that they would have all just not been
in my selfish endeavors for so long. You're like, come on.
She walks out of the room, and there is a flash of the creepy doll through the window as she leaves. She goes home, and she's just, like, hanging out in her, like, casual wear and just, like, being depressed, lying on the ground and while it's raining outside, and she hears her alarm, and it's like, oh, I gotta get to work. Oh, no way, I got fired. And Joshua's gone, and my group's gone. And Garrow, we don't really have the kind of relationship where I can call on him. I don't have a family or friends. I don't really have anyone. I guess I'm all alone. And she looks over at the doll, which is the only thing she's got right now, and gives it a cuddle.
Yeah.
And then she's like, I got work to do. I've got to do my art theft thing. And this is going to be a tough mission. So I hired an assistant through Undead. I wonder what kind of person they are. And a hamster appears at the table she's sitting at as Arashiyama appears, and she makes a big confident introduction. I'm the hamster user, Kimie Arashiyama. And she's super confident. So, hey, interesting. 2 of Garrow's girls are going to team up together.
Yeah, my potential favorite of all the girls and my least favorite of all the girls are a tag team, Nick.
Yeah, Arashiyama's just kind of... She's not bad, but...
She's okay.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Garrow is like, why hasn't Himiko replied to my text message?
These 2 are so cute for one another because they're both just weird, socially anxious dorks. Like, she's just like, I guess, surely there's nothing weird going on in my life. Everyone just decided to spontaneously abandon me all at once. And he's just like, damn, she hasn't responded to me. It must be my fault that I fucked up too many. I didn't put enough emojis in my text message. And you're like... Boy. You poor sad dopes. I'm also a sad dope, but...
Oh, we've got 3 more chapters to get through. I can actually get through New Sexorcist very quickly. Chapter 67, About the Enemy. So, the bad guys are planning to speed up the resurrection of the Hyo. They want to do this in less than 2 weeks for the first one. Yoriko says that old man-looking spirit we saw talking to Wanido's corpse before, his name is Shin. He has the ability to copy any physical thing that he touches. So they're worried he's touched a ritual blade at the side of the battle with Wanido, which he did, which means he can now copy the ritual blade. If he does that, Kasha, Raisei's partner that he's bonded with, can exercise the copy of the ritual blade, which will thereby unlock Kasha's sealed ability, Super Interference with Dimensions, which means that they can then resurrect the other Hyo. Okay, sure, fine, fair. Whatever. The head of the Exorcist Bureau shows up. Her name is Izane Suga. You know the leader of the Hashira in Demon Slayer, the very young but old and sickly looking man who is blind. The opposite of him in every way. Where he was old and sickly despite not even being 30 years old, but everyone greatly respected him because of everything he had done for them. Everyone here is just like, yeah, Izane's cool, and they're just very casual around her and don't make a big deal of her being there at all. Which I understand is the point of this scene. It does not build her up in any way of importance.
She doesn't have, like, an interesting thing to, like, dynamic to bring into this. Like, I feel like she should be, like, a Nick Fury or something like that. But I'm just like, I don't know. This seems kind of boring. Like, she's just, like... They, like, revealed that she's like, oh, she intentionally has been kind of testing us as well. And I'm just like, fuck off. Like, at some point, this is just, like, not an exciting development for this character.
Also, she's 86, but she looks like she's 20. And it's like, all right, fine, whatever. She kind of just reiterates that Gakuro's task is to subjugate the Hyo. And so Gakuro says, like, yes, I know that it would be very bad if if we had to seal them, because many irreplaceable people would die, and I won't let that happen. We'll defeat the Hyo without yielding a single casualty. And I kind of believe him, not because I believe in his strength or anyone else's, but because there have been no consequences that any good guys have suffered at all to any spirit attack thus far in this series.
Yes.
Anytime it looks like someone is gonna die or at least get mutilated, they're totally fine 2 chapters later. So then we see that Shin has copied the ritual blade. It apparently really took a lot out of him. There's like blood coming from his nose and stuff, but now he's like, have Kasha exorcise it. Then we see very briefly the captain of the 1st Division beating someone in like hand-to-hand combat. Then we cut to after the rap party in Nue's space, Gakuro is there with her, and she says, "From now on, I'm going to train you personally." And Gakuro's like, "Huh?" And she says, "Yes, both of you." And then the vice captain of the first division shows up, Yamato Rido, and he says to Gakuro, "Let me ask you something. Do you have a lover?" Very weird. Hey, that's done.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about Daddy Exorcist and what he's going to do. There's a good chance I either hate this character or I fantasize about him nightly. So we're gonna find out what happens next week, probably. But in the meantime, let's talk about Akane-banashi. This is story 127, Impossible Task.
Yes, we get a recap of what Akane learned about Shigena's art in the past few chapters, which is that, hey, her father wanted to learn it. He was expelled because he showed disapprove of the whole thing. Now Akane is on the path to do the same thing, but she's really frustrated at Shigema because he didn't tell her about all this stuff beforehand, and she kind of just has like a big session where she's like, "Fuck you, Shigema," while she's at her house. But she acknowledges he probably was waiting for the right time to tell me this, because I get like this all the time. So there is at least that self-awareness about her. She drinks some milk, which is her entire breakfast, which her mother points out is a bad idea. Gets a text from Maikeru who says, "Hey, you want to do some fun summer stuff with the boys?" And so she goes to hang out with them, and there is this weird mini aqueduct that they have set up. It's a flume so that they can cook somen and have the somen flow down the flume, which they can then scoop off and eat it fresh while they slam back beers. And Maikeru demonstrates this by knocking back a beer brand beer. And
yeah, it looks like this rules. I don't know what to tell you. This looks like this is the coolest fucking day of my life.
All the boys are very enthusiastic about this. Maikeru gives this big introduction. Koguma is the one who has like done all of the architecture on it to make sure it is perfectly angled, and Kyoji is the one who's boiling the somen. And even Guriko is getting in on it. He's just contacting them long distance, and he supplied the somen that they make in Nara. There's a great reaction when they have Guriko on the phone because Akane is just like, "If you miss us, just come home." It's very cute. Guriko asks, like, "Hey, you were the opening act for Master's Big Show, right? How'd it go?" And she, visually reacts, and immediately they're all like, yeah, did it to you too, huh? And Guriko says, he always puts everyone up to an impossible task right after their Futatsume confrontation. With Kyoji, he says, mine was to not make people laugh. Koguma's was, he ordered me to dig up a story out of nowhere. And Guriko says his, but there's a connection error, so we don't hear what his is. Maikeru says, everyone had a hard task, but keep in mind, Master only says what he believes we can do.
Yeah.
So Akane thinks about what Shigema told her after his performance, which was, "I'm going on ahead, keep up." And so Maikeru is like, yeah, he doesn't really like talk a whole lot to explain himself. He tries to act all humble, but like he'd rather speak through actions, not words, which is frustrating. And then Shigema shows up for the party too, and he's like, "Oh, sorry for speaking with actions rather than words." Shigema and Akane go to have a little talk together while the boys are setting up their soben flume. And Akane is like, I know you were like giving me this advance warning since there's all this complicated background behind the story. And Shigema says, "Yeah, that's right." And Akane is like, "Why are you tiptoeing around it? I don't need to hear all that drama. Just say, I trust you. Follow along. You don't have to turn it into this big test of my character. The loincloth of my heart is already tightened." So she was making fun of him for that task during her own performance, and now she's using it sincerely.
Yes.
So Shigema says, "I'll leave that story with you then." And then Akane's stomach starts to rumble because she literally has not eaten anything all day. And so they all have a bunch of soap together. Big party.
Hey, isn't that cute? It's a fun chapter. Pretty short, but, having these moments of the group just hanging out together and having fun is what creates the family dynamic that makes these relationships important. So, good stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. And now we're going to finish things up with One Piece.
Yes, One Piece, Nick, chapter 1127, Adventure in the Land of Mystery. Yamato's hanging out with Dogstorm. Hey, I can't believe this is going on 15 chapters already. It feels like not much has happened. So a bunch of giants are reacting.
I don't know how to tell you this, Quinn. there were a lot of characters in the Wano arc.
If this gets to like 60 or 70, I would not be surprised. There's a bunch of giants reacting to the fact that their home is on fire right now, and they're like, "Yes, we have to make sure it doesn't spread to Yggdrasil, where the world tree is. We should report to the sun god." But they also note some of their bees, which are humongous as well, are on the ground. They're like, "Oh no, our stingmores have been attacked." And there's also been word of the ear god collapsing inside of the forest. So we cut over to Big Stein Castle, where Nami is the one taking these bees out. She keeps electrifying them, and she's like, "What is with these horrible bees?" Yeah, she's like, "What's with these awful bees?" And she's very confused. She is calling out for everyone else. She's like, "Zoro, Sanji, Luffy, I'll even settle for Usopp." She's so confused, and she's like, "Fuck, it was that goddamn alcohol we drank." She runs into a porcupine that she thinks might be cute until it shoots out spikes and becomes angry, and she's like, "Oh, this isn't good. Where are you, Usopp?" And Usopp's like, "I'm down here." And she
Save me.
looks over a cliff, and he's being eaten by a cat. He's like, "Save me." And she's like, "No, you're supposed to save me. What's happening?" So she does get involved. She summons lightning to attack the porcupine, and the porcupine falls on the cat. The cat gets electrified and starts chasing them. They run all the way to a dead end. Usopp gets slapped off of the castle. Nami's falling after him. She survives the fall. Good for her, because that looked like a drop. But it looks like they're about to get eaten by this lion, which now it's a lion. It started off as a cat, and this thing is turned into a lion, I believe.
Yes, it's definitely designed differently.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that is when Sanji, Luffy, and Zoro show up and take this thing out. They just do a big combo attack, and then they just kind of celebrate. Luffy's like, "Hey, can we eat this one?" And they're like, "I don't know, like, this is a cat. I don't think it's going to be very tasty or whatever." And of course, Sanji's just like, "Hey, Nami, it's so cool we get to see you." But we just see the characters basically interact for a moment. Luffy's like, "It seems like it'd be really fun. Like, we've seen some other great big creatures, and if they taste good, it's worth the trouble to do this." But Zoro's like, "We should find what happened to the rest of the crew first and the ship."
And also, why our clothes all changed.
I assume none of the guys even noticed. They're all just like, "Yeah, sounds cool." Zoro has like a eye mask on. So
it's very weird, especially because of his scar, which means his left eye is always closed.
Yeah, it's very curious. But that's pretty much it. That's the end of the chapter. I assume we're going to learn more about how this like Elbath works very soon, but this is the start of a new arc in One Piece. This may be the last time we really even get to do this. I don't know what like the final arc of One Piece will be, but yeah.
And it's neat that we have the OG5 on this little expedition together.
Yeah.
It's just Luffy, Sanji, Zoro, Nami, and Usopp. So, the first 5 Straw Hats are doing this, and it's also, kind of a throwback because the Giants are involved. I do like some of the costumes that they're wearing. There's just a lot of, like, Viking stuff going on. I like that for no reason whatsoever, Usopp's costume for this arc includes a beard.
Yeah,
He just has a beard now.
Sometimes that's just how it works. Sometimes Frankie's hair is a cannon. We don't get an answer for why it is shaped like that. He doesn't fire anything out of it. That's something he likes to do. So yeah, Usopp is just like, "Yeah, put a beard on me at some point."
Yep, there's little bits here and there. It's not just that, like, hey, Elbaf has, small things that are big, like the Legos and bees, but there's also all this Viking Norse mythology kind of references where there's all these different gods, and there's freaking Yggdrasil here.
Specifically, they were like, "Oh, we have to go talk to the sun god," which I'm curious what that means if that's not in the context of Luffy.
Yeah. And I do love Viking stuff. So awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excited to see where that arc goes. That's our chapters for this week. I can't believe that actually took as little time as it did to do all that stuff.
We ran through them great job, Nick. High fives. Like, this is like NASA scientists were shaking hands after like a successful rocket launch. Like, gentlemen, good job. Enjoy sleeping with your wives tonight.
What
That's
was your
the
favorite
twist,
chapter?
Nick. All of the NASA scientists are lesbians. My favorite chapter this week, I think, is going to be Ichi the Witch. I really enjoyed it. It was it was a simple chapter, but I was like, if this is like a sign of what like a regular chapter of the series is going to be like, then I'm super on board for this. This was really fun.
123% in agreement with you for all the reasons you just said. It is also my chapter of the week.
Yeah.
I really, really liked this chapter, and also it was very funny too.
Yes. I am going to say, what is it, Himika or Himikawa from Marriagetoxin is my character of the week. I loved getting to see her again. I just really felt for her in that moment as she's just like, oh, I guess I'm just all alone now. And you're like, no, girl, you have a support network and someone's trying to keep it from you right now. Like, it's very, like, sad. And I'm just glad to see her again. I really like her character.
Yeah, I totally get that. What is my character? I think that my character of the week. Oh God, this is actually hard because there were a lot of interesting standouts that happened.
All right. Well, Nick. Normally we don't allow this, but I am going to allow you to pick Alan from Mar if you would like to.
No, Edward specifically.
You can pick Edward. I know he's really running through your head a lot.
I think I'm gonna go with Ayame from Blue Box. I thought that she and Kyo had some nice interactions. Like I said, I really liked the way that we were getting to see the way that they were looking at each other and being drawn to each other. But also just the whole thing with Sadako that she was doing was also just really funny. I liked that she was doing this thing where it's like, well, what's wrong with my Sadako impression? And then she's like, wait, Sadako doesn't talk. So yeah, it was good stuff. But there were quite a few different characters I could see that would stand out. And I think I know what the audience's was, but I haven't checked. So
the audience picked Ichi the Witch as their chapter of the week. Nick, can you guess what the audience pick was?
If I had to put money on it, I would go with, let me get the name right. Cook the Exorcist Bird.
You are correct. Cook the Exorcist Bird is the audience MVP this week.
And I do get it. Like I don't even like much particularly usually care for animal sidekicks. I also liked Cook the Exorcist Bird.
It's just a funny, yeah.
Yeah.
I also would have considered giving it just to the Sniper of Liberty because that page turn was fucking wild. Like I'm shocked I didn't give it anything this week, but that moment was one of my like craziest page turns of the year.
Oh, something I forgot to actually talk about during the chapter discussion. I like how earlier in this fight we had the demonstration of the power of the aging devil by people cutting off their fingers, but it was always like 3 people doing it. And then we saw thousands of people get their fingers cut off for the Sniper of Liberty to activate. It's just a thing of like, hey, this is the scales that we're working with here for what was sacrificed for this attack.
Hell yeah. All right.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Weekly Manga Recap. We will have more for you guys next week. We will be doing it at our usual time of around 7:30 Wednesday evening. Check it out on twitch.tv/Weekly Manga Recap. You can also watch our past episodes on youtube.com/Weekly Manga Recap, where we have an opening sequence by Malajack Stillis and Wensleydale Cheddar. We also have occasional Tyler cards done by Steve Man, whose artwork you can check out everywhere by searching for Steve Man Art. We are also on Patreon, patreon.com/Weekly Manga Recap, if you want to chip into the show monetarily and also get some bonus content for your trouble. We talk about weird things. We do some goofy exercises in terms of creating stuff or coming up with lists. And also we talk about Western comics increasingly now, as we have been expanding on that. Quinn talks about X-Men with me, and I talk about weird comic book storylines that I remember with her.
Yeah.
So check that stuff out. It's funny. It's good. Honestly, it's been some of my favorite stuff to actually listen back to us talking about too. We are also on weeklymangarecap.podbean.com if you just want to listen to the episodes, and we are on iTunes and Spotify and other podcast feed type places. Join our Discord. It'll be linked wherever this gets posted. Take part in the community. Use that to find the Google Doc maintained by Ninja X3R, where you can vote for a series for us to take as a recommendation, your favorite stuff from the week of the series that we cover in the recap, and other fun stuff. Speaking of recommendations, guys, next week is going to be October, which means the return of Halloween month and the return of the Spookmaster General. So
you don't have to say it like that. She has feelings.
Spookmaster General. So get ready for that. We will be talking for the first week, or the first series, I guess, at least, for Halloween month, will be You Will Hear the Voice of the Dead. So that is going to be the first spooky series that we will be talking about for Halloween month.
Really quick, I want to remind, because we mentioned at the top of the show, I want to do a reminder here at the end, just in case you didn't go check out. You could check the description for this video to find a link to the memorial for LossThief and also to the GoFundMe. Again,
yes.
We want to make sure that's out there. Anything you can do to help in this tragedy would be really, really great. But then, yeah, to your point, Nick, I mean, next week I'm noticing that is October 2nd. Do you think she'll show up next week?
I really hope not. I hope it every year.
Oh, well, you know what, Nick? Let's see. Because, I mean, we're actually pretty far away. Like, I believe the lore is always that my powers get weaker the closer to October comes. So we still have, like, almost a week. So I'm feeling fine, actually, you know? Mm-hmm. So maybe she's not going to come this year.
Okay. Well, I will count on that then. So...
Nick, what's a scary word that rhymes with Ichi?
Not happening. So... Lychee. So...
Fuck, that's really good. All right, goodbye.